Deep within the dense rainforests of the Democratic Republic of Congo, a mysterious creature is roaming its habitat. Its name sends shivers down the spines of locals and explorers alike. I'm talking about Bili Apes. These legendary giants of the jungle have become the protagonists of many tales and legends, as well as numerous speculations. Imagine a chimpanzee. Now make it bigger, almost the size of a human when standing on its two. Make it wider and stronger. It nests on the ground in trees like gorillas and feasts on fierce beasts like leopards. That's a Bili ape. Through generations, locals have been whispering about Bili apes to each other. There are stories of them roaming the jungles on their 2 feet, vanishing into thin air when encountered by a human but leaving massive footprints behind. People claim that they have heard the creatures howling at the moon. They also state that the beasts are immune to poisonous darts. Locals call them the ones which beat the tree and the one which kills the lion. Local communities view them as guardians of the forest, possessing ancient wisdom passed down through the ages. About 2 decades ago, scientists and researchers got intrigued by what was going on in those rainforests and what those creatures were. A group of researchers went to study them, and here's what they found out. Remember that the locals say that Bili apes avoid humans. That's true, but not exactly. Turns out that Bili apes live in the part of the forest that is close to where humans live, and really prefer to avoid people. Adult males are more afraid of people than females. But as you go deeper into the forest, you see Bilis that have never seen people before. Those have no fear, and they even show interest in their guests. They walk around you with curiosity, or even come face to face with you and stare at you before moving away. The apes don't show any aggression. Much like other chimpanzees, Bili apes live in social groups of 10 to 100 members. Every troop has a leader, a dominant alpha male. How do they determine the leader? Usually it's just the biggest male, so it's simple here. The leader makes decisions and protects the group, but he also has the highest rank and gets priority access to everything, like food or mates. There are even more rankings. Females have their own ranks, and more dominant apes have influence over others. They really are bigger than an average chimpanzee, and early in life, they have a gray coat. Their diet is also similar to that of chimpanzees. This means that about 90% of their diet is plants and fruits, only 6% is animal products, and the remaining 4% are insects. In some instances, they act more like gorillas. For example, these fearless creatures don't only nest on trees, but on the ground as well. They make their nests themselves, moving branches and samplings into central bowls. Researchers are still baffled by this fact because the ground isn't safe, with all those leopards, lions, and buffaloes roaming around. Maybe those creatures are as fierce as the local tales say. But here's the thing. The apes that live close to humans avoid nesting on the ground and are also way quieter, trying to avoid hunters. By the way, the nests of chimpanzees are cleaner than our beds. Those guys build a new nest every single night to keep bugs and whatever else out. Their creative abilities don't end with making nests. Bili apes actively use tools too. They have been observed using sticks or branches as tools to probe termite mounds or extract honey from beehives. There are several types of tools, and all have a particular purpose. The tools used to harvest driver ants are the largest ever found in Africa. This shows that these creatures have quite impressive cognitive abilities and problem-solving skills. Also, social learning. If one chimpanzee figures something out and that works, the others will observe, learn, and adopt the same strategy. Not every animal is capable of that. So that's what we know. When the research group came back, one of the members published a report in a magazine. Their faces are much flatter than those of chimpanzees. They turn gray early in life. They have a distinct howl that gets louder during the full moon. Those must be a new species unknown to scientists, a hybrid of the gorilla and the chimpanzee. Well, that's quite a scientific discovery. The researcher gave many interviews to famous channels and magazines, but then it was discovered that the researchers had a PhD in behavioral psychology. So some experts in the field turned skeptical about her report. Bilis did show some unique behavior that's not typical to chimpanzees, but that was mostly limited to nesting on the ground. So, are they a new species or not? The other members of the research group came forward after comparing Bili's DNA to the DNA of chimpanzees. They announced that the two samples of DNA were the same. They confirmed that the mysterious Bili apes were the same species as chimpanzees. Even more than that, they weren't even mutants or hybrids. Yes, they were a tiny bit bigger, and they would go gray earlier. But take humans. Some are taller, some are shorter, some are wider. Some get gray hairs earlier. And we all have different skin and hair and eye color. But just because I'm blonde and have an average height, and my neighbor is tall and has dark hair, it doesn't make us different species. So, that was the argument of the other scientists from the research group. So, the whole speculation of Bili apes being a new species unknown to science was nothing. The claim that Bilis howl at the moon was also debunked by another researcher from the group. The story is not new. There were other instances of such wrong calls, but there were also the opposite cases, when two species were believed to be the same but turned out to be different. For example, Sumatran orangutan and Bornean orangutan were thought to be the same species for a while. But in the late 1990s, scientists established that the two were different. Both look alike, and both have that typical shaggy reddish fur. But Sumatran orangutans have longer hair and have closer social bonds with their community. Bornean orangutans are the ones who would go down to the ground more often. Both of the species are endangered, with just a bit over 100,000 Bornean orangutans left and just 14,000 Sumatrans. As recently as 2017, a new third species of orangutan was announced, the Tapanuli orangutan. There are just about 800 of those left in the world, and it's the most endangered species of all apes. Let's throw in a couple of facts about apes. Wild chimpanzees only live in Africa, and only in 21 countries of all. That's also the homeland of humans. Yes, millions of years ago, the first humans evolved in Africa. Chimpanzees are actually humans' closest living relatives. A human and a chimpanzee share an impressive 98.8% of the DNA. Humans, chimps, and bonobos share the same ancestor from 7 million years back. That's a very distant relative, but it explains why we're so alike. Seriously, we are. Chimps can catch human diseases, and scientists believe that they can develop Alzheimer's. Also, chimps have distinctive personality types similar to humans. They display varied degrees of the 5 major personality traits: extroversion, openness, agreeableness, neuroticism, and conscientiousness. Chimpanzees are also known for fighting over territories with other groups. As I told you, they also learn from each other, not just about tools, but stuff like fashion too. In Zambia, a chimpanzee once stuck a stalk of grass behind her ear. And other female chimpanzees did the same thing after her. Also, the language. They won't be able to speak English, of course, but one chimpanzee that lives in captivity has picked up American Sign Language. Now it can do more than 350 signs to communicate with the caretakers. The chimp even passed this knowledge down to her adopted son.
47-year-old Kenny Veach told his family he was going hiking for 2 days. His destination? The Mojave Desert. The man wanted to revisit a cave he had discovered during one of his previous hikes. But that was the last time anyone had seen Kenny Veach. A helicopter and over 30 search and rescue teams came back empty. The hiker was nowhere to be found. Was the mysterious M cave behind his disappearance? The oddest thing about Kenny's case is the fact that he was a seasoned hiker. He often went on solo trips to explore deserts in California and Nevada. The man was an ultralight hiker. That meant he brought only the most basic of supplies: water, food, and a tent. That's all. But this was enough for several days of camping in the desert. Kenny would rarely bring a GPS device with him. He didn't even bother to pack a compass or a map. Some would call him reckless, but he managed to get back home every single time. Kenny wasn't shy either. He had a YouTube channel where he regularly posted his adventures. He named his channel Snakebit McGee because he picked up snakes wherever he went. But Kenny also had another habit. He went into every cave he found in the desert. Now, he didn't post many videos. Kenny mostly used YouTube to comment on other people's adventures. In a comment from June 2014, the man revealed that he had discovered a mysterious M-shaped cave. It was located in the Sheep Mountains of North Las Vegas. Kenny's description of the cave is where the weird part of the story begins. He spotted it while hiking and noticed the cave had an interesting entrance. It was shaped like a perfect letter M. Kenny went up to it, but something didn't seem right. He reported that his body started to shake as he approached the cave. The vibrations were so strong near the entrance that Kenny turned back. In his own words, he was scared for his life. It must have really been something if it frightened an experienced trekker. Kenny had an impressive track record. He had been hiking for 20 years. He explored caves other people were too afraid to even enter. Once, he was bitten by a rattlesnake and had to spend a week in the hospital. On his journeys, the man found skulls of all shapes and sizes, as well as old animal traps. Kenny slept on mountain peaks under the stars. One time, he hurt his leg on a mountaintop. He had to walk 20 miles back to his truck. It was 100 degrees Fahrenheit that day, and Kenny had 1 cup of water to keep him going. Kenny Veach was a true survivalist. But this one cave was a mystery to him. He admitted that he was totally unprepared that day. He had the tools to open a can, but not to fight the mysterious force that took over his body. But Kenny wasn't a quitter. He made plans to return to the M Cave, and this time, he was going to be ready. He did so several months later, but much better equipped. But the trip turned out to be a bust. He recorded a video, but couldn't find the cave. Was that it? Was the brave explorer finally going to quit? Not by a long shot. His followers on social media wanted him to solve the mystery. So he went out into the desert for the 3rd time. He planned a short, overnight trip, but nobody ever saw him again. After 2 days, his family alerted the authorities. They quickly launched a search for the missing man. Now we come to the weird part. In one of his videos, Kenny stood in front of an abandoned mine shaft. This is where he briefed the viewers on the mission. Rescue teams reached this point and found Kenny's phone. This was 10 days into the search, but the trail soon went cold. The rescuers feared the worst. They decided to send a camera down the shaft, but didn't find anything. For a full month, no one had any idea where Kenny was. And then, the mystery deepened. An unknown woman came forward online. She claimed to be the missing man's girlfriend. The mysterious woman told the story of how she went with Kenny on hour-long hikes. She urged hikers to use GPS not to get lost. And then, a claim that shocked social media users. The woman believed Kenny's disappearance wasn't an accident. She revealed that her alleged boyfriend had some serious issues. Apparently, he had quit his job a year prior to his disappearance. Did Kenny Veach really trek into the desert to take his own life? People weren't convinced. Kenny's daughter believed her father just had an accident. In her words, he was a survivor. Was the mysterious M Cave responsible for his disappearance? Did he find someone or something he shouldn't have found there? The questions linger, and so did the theories among the online community. Fellow hikers and YouTubers were determined to find the M Cave. This would solve Kenny Veach's mysterious disappearance once and for all. In 2021, one hiker got lucky. He claimed to have found the secretive M Cave. For safety reasons, the man couldn't reveal his exact location. The cave sits somewhere near Nevada State Route 375 East. The entrance to the cave really looked like an oversized letter M, just like Veach described it. But the shape is too hard to notice from ground level. Only when you look at it from above is the M shape visible. Who knows, hikers might have been walking past it for years without noticing the cave. Even Kenny couldn't locate the entrance the second time he went looking for it. The cave wasn't very deep, but there was something odd at the entrance. There appears to have been a straight line of rocks. Did someone try to wall off the entrance? And at the back of the cave, there was an even stranger find. Small pieces of wood were scattered along the floor. They looked a lot like 2x4s that are used in construction. Was there a door here once? The hiker found a nail sticking out of the stone. It could be part of a latch that was there some time ago. But the strangest part was the writing on the wall. Hatch or Veach? It's hard to tell. The hiker that discovered the cave didn't want to stay to find out. He left the cave in a hurry. No, it wasn't because he felt a strange vibration in his body like Kenny. He just didn't want to be in a desert cave in the middle of nowhere. This is the Mojave Desert, one of the most dangerous landscapes on Earth. Could this setting better explain how Kenny Veach disappeared without a trace in 2014? The desert's nickname is well-deserved. This is where scientists recorded the hottest temperature on the planet. 134 degrees Fahrenheit, and the average temperature during summer, just 113 degrees Fahrenheit, no sweat. But you'll also need a blanket. At night, the air temperatures drop well below freezing. Talk about a climate roller coaster. And the list of dangers doesn't end there. The driest and hottest place in the United States is home to dangerous animals. Mountain lions, venomous lizards, spiders, and wasps. You name it. Any one of these animals can end the life of an unsuspecting hiker. There is a reason why Kenny always wore snake guards when trekking. And then there are mine shafts. Local authorities strongly advise hikers not to enter them. These old mines from the 1800s are highly unstable. A person can easily fall down a hidden shaft. They also have pockets of bad air, which can suffocate a person. And remember the likable wildlife? They too live in these shafts. Rattlesnakes, scorpions, and black widow spiders. Kenny Veach could have easily fallen into one of these shafts, and there would be no help for him from miles around, since Nevada is one of the least populated states.
Now, of course you know that the Amazon River is famous for its piranhas, bull sharks, and other creatures you don't want to meet. But there are even more dangerous rivers in the world. The deepest of them, the Congo, goes so far down in some sections that even light can't reach there. It's the only major river that crosses the equator twice and carries enough water to fill more than 13 Olympic-sized swimming pools into the Atlantic Ocean every second. Wow! Even the most experienced boaters have trouble passing through all of the river's strong currents, rapids in its upper part, and waterfalls and gorges in the lower section. The Congo currents are so fast and powerful that they even divide animals like mountains and oceans do. There are new species of fish evolving separately on the two banks as they can't reach the other side and breed with each other. One of the most dangerous types of fish living here is the Goliath tigerfish. These monsters, that grow up to 5 feet and travel at the speed of 25 miles per hour, are relatives of piranhas. Their mouths are full of vicious, razor-sharp teeth. Their females lay hundreds of thousands of eggs, and the offspring are predators from birth. You have a good reason to fear the Goliath tigerfish, as they're the only freshwater fish in Africa that have attacked crocodiles and even humans. Okay, not swimming there. There are dense jungles and more hungry wildlife, including snakes and some aggressive hippos, all along the river. Still, it's used as a water highway in Central Africa, so barges traveling on it for weeks are often crowded with up to 2,000 people and capsize every now and then. And if you believe the local folklore, there's one more thing to be afraid of: the one who stops the flow of the rivers, a dinosaur-like beast that is said to live in the Congo River basin. There have been over 100 sightings over the last century, but no one can provide solid evidence the beast is real. At the turn of the 21st century, there was a series of terrible, mysterious stories on the Kali River in Asia. Something described as a mud-colored water pig would drag swimmers underwater in front of terrified eyewitnesses. British biologist Jeremy Wade stepped up to crack the case. He noticed that all the scary incidents were happening in one specific spot, stretching about 4 miles. Villagers told him this creature was growing big and bad from all the food it got. Wade examined the water with a depth sounder and thought it could have been a whirlpool. Then the monster dragged a domestic water buffalo into the water. The buffaloes are big and heavy, so the creature that attacked it would have to be super strong. Saltwater crocodiles don't go so far inland, and the most common local species of crocodiles don't live in cold waters. There were no bull sharks in the area either. Finally, Wade spotted several goonch catfish underwater. Some of them were human-sized. They couldn't capture these monsters with a regular fishing rod, but a special ceremonial construction did the job. The largest fish was 6 feet 7 inches long and 3 times the weight of an average conch. It was large enough to take down a human or a large animal, but Wade mentioned there could be even bigger ones living in the Kali River. The Orinoco River in South America is dangerous to navigate because of some crazy curves and strong underwater currents. It's easy to get lost here, even if you have your GPS on. There are sudden waterfalls all along, and you must be prepared to handle those to survive. The river is the only home to a rare Orinoco crocodile and has some pretty scary-looking vampire fish swimming around. This payara fish has sharp, spiky daggers that line their gums and 2 elongated fangs that rise from their lower jaws. Could probably use an orthodontist and some braces, you think? It's a ferocious hunter constantly looking for the next victim, which is going to be a medium or large-sized fish. If a human catches a payara, it will defend itself, leaving cuts, nips, and bites, but there are no known cases of this cutie taking a human life. Well, that's good. The Yellow River in China received its name after its color, but it wasn't always this yellow. It was first formed at least 30 million years ago and shifted its course over 30 times over the centuries. Yellow sediments moving downstream from a plateau in the distance transformed it from clear to muddy. This fine-grained substance piled up at the bottom of the river and formed natural dams. The huge amounts of water that the river carries need to find their way to the sea, and that's when major floods happened, taking several million lives in various epochs. The locals tried to solve the problem by building higher and higher levees, but it only made things worse. Water coming out of the river would now have nowhere to back up, as the riverbed was higher than the surrounding land. This even shifted the river's mouth. Now there are massive dams and dikes all along the river to try to contain it. The Parana River is the second longest in Latin America and has many tributaries. They flow in from the highlands near the Andes, and there's a huge drainage in the wet season. This makes the river a perfect home for, guess what, piranhas. There are 30 to 60 species of these scary fish in the Parana waters. In late 2013, they attacked bathers cooling off by the water on a hot day. People started running out of the river as they felt something was biting them in the water. Luckily, no one lost their lives in the accident, but it's still considered one of the most audacious piranha attacks ever recorded. Biologists later determined that the type of piranhas, called palomates, was to blame for this, and humans had probably disturbed their breeding grounds. Well, the piranha also has a strong current that is tricky for boats and swimmers to overcome. Plus, it often floods, which can be dangerous for people living in the surrounding areas. The longest river in the world, the Nile, flows through 11 countries all the way into the Mediterranean Sea. Expeditions have spent centuries looking for its source, and no one still knows for sure where this mighty river begins. Adding to the mystery, the Nile takes an unexpected turn right in the middle of the Sahara. Scientists have figured out the reason is a massive underground rock formation from millions of years ago. The Nile has served as the most important water highway for civilizations through centuries, but it has some pretty dangerous inhabitants, like crocodiles that grow to be 20 feet long, which is slightly more than the height of an average giraffe. These bad guys can reach a speed of 30 miles per hour on land and take the lives of a couple hundred people every year. Hippopotamuses that also live here sometimes go after boats, and venomous snakes like the black mamba and the Egyptian cobra add to the mix. One of the most dangerous creatures on the Nile is the mosquito, as they carry around all sorts of diseases that affect hundreds of thousands of people. The Brahmaputra River in Asia carries waters from the mighty Himalayas. When the snows in the mountains melt, the river floods massively, causing landslides, displacing millions of people, and taking the lives of hundreds of animals in the nearby national parks. Such floods are also common during the monsoon season in India, from June to October, with heavy rains. The course of the Brahmaputra River is changed incredibly over the past 2.5 centuries. Erosion is another danger it's hiding. The banks of the river are mostly made of weak cohesive sand and silt, and even though the erosion rate has gone down, it is still the reason a lot of people lose their land and get displaced. The Brahmaputra is one of the few rivers in the world that has a tidal bore. That's a strong tidal wave that pushes up the river against the current where a river empties into an ocean or sea. And there you have it. A word of warning: when you're in Australia, never stick your finger into these holes. They might be home to burrowing spiders. Some species have a bite powerful enough to pierce nails. It feels similar to a hammer on your finger because of the venom. So always give your boots and outdoor clothes a quick check to be safe. Animals sometimes make homes or look for food in them, especially bandicoots. Silk-lined burrows in shady spots might belong to funnel web spiders. The silk works as a trip line to alert the spider inside about what's happening outside. Look for shiny dark brown to black spiders with finger-like spinnerets at the end of their abdomen. Then you'll find them. Males have a hefty mating spur sticking out of the middle of their second pair of legs. When these spiders feel threatened, they make aggressive moves, rearing up and showing off their startling fangs. These spiders, which belong to the Aranida order, are known for their funnel-shaped webs that widen at the entrance. They patiently wait in the narrow funnel for prey to touch the web, then swiftly capture it. In Australia, large brown spiders frighten people due to their venomous bites. They are infamous for causing people to lose their lives in southern and eastern Australia, particularly in the Sydney area since the 1920s. Quick access to the antidote after a bite is crucial in preventing severe consequences. The next spider is one of the world's most dangerous venomous spiders. Phonutria nigriviter is a spider living in South America. People often call it the Brazilian wandering spider. You see, in Brazil, 4,000 people get bitten by this critter each year. The bites can cause serious issues, such as hypertension, blurred vision, sweating, and vomiting. You wouldn't want to mate with this creature, as you can also face way more severe consequences than blurred vision. In some situations, its kiss can take a life. Apart from messing with humans, this spider has a diverse menu, including crickets, katydids, and even larger options like tree frogs, lizards, and bats. Operating under the cover of darkness, these creatures are the most active during the night. They ambush their prey instead of relying on webs. In the daytime, they seek refuge beneath logs or in narrow crevices. They love to be around banana trees, but can be found in urban areas and inside homes too. If you spot them one day, be prepared. This creature's body is covered with thick brown hair and is not that small. In 2013, a London family had to leave their home due to an infestation of Brazilian wandering spiders. The trouble began when an egg sac, hidden in a bunch of bananas, made its way to their local grocery store. No one noticed. When the family bought the bananas, the egg sac broke open. Potentially lethal spiders spread around the house. Over 2,500 people visit poison control centers annually in the U.S. Black widows are spiders with the signature hourglass mark on their bellies. Well, let's talk about their bite. These creatures have a bad reputation because their venom is supposedly 15 times stronger than what rattlesnakes pack. When they bite humans, the bite causes muscle aches and nausea. The venom can even mess with breathing by paralyzing the diaphragm. Despite these cases, most people who get bitten don't end up with serious issues unless they're elderly or very young. These sneaky creatures don't pick just one spot to hang out. You can find them in wood piles, burrows, or among plants that act as scaffolding for their webs. Black widows are especially dangerous for other insects and their mates. After a not-so-romantic mating dance, ladies sometimes go all Hannibal Lecter on their mates. These spiders are architects too, spinning massive webs where females stash a cocoon loaded with hundreds of eggs. Baby spiders move out once they hatch, but the web stays put. Those webs are also traps. Different kinds of prey later join the black widow's spooky snack collection. Yellow sac spiders range in size from approximately 0.12 to 0.6 inches and construct silken tubes under stones, in leaves, or in grass. They're found across the United States and southward toward Mexico and South America. They are venomous to humans and, unfortunately, are commonly spotted indoors. The venom of the yellow sac spider contains cytotoxin. This is a substance that can damage or impair cell function. Reactions like redness and swelling at the bite site are common. Yellow sac spiders are not known for their calm nature either. For instance, a female yellow sac spider may bite when protecting her eggs. These spiders usually come in different light colors. They can be a hassle for people in more than one way. Your car can be in danger too. On rare occasions, they may even set up nests in car engines. Moving on to wolf spiders. They're part of a large and widespread group found worldwide. They're named this way for their wolf-like hunting behavior of chasing and pouncing on prey. Around 125 species exist in North America, and approximately 50 live in Europe. These spiders are typically dark brown, with long, broad, hairy bodies and sturdy elongated legs. Like me. Just kidding. They're super speedy. While they usually create silk-lined tubular nests in the ground, some may conceal the entrance with debris. Others build turret-like structures. A few species also spin webs. Wolf spiders may bite in self-defense. They are venomous, but their bites are not considered dangerous. Some people who are allergic to spider bites may experience nausea, dizziness, and an elevated heart rate. The bite of the spider's large fangs is similar to a bee sting, so it can cause a physical wound at the bite site, and the venom may cause itchiness. The combination of their powerful bite, rapid movements, and startling appearance can be quite unsettling. Beware of the redback spider, a close relative of the notorious black widow. It used to live in Australia, yet it has managed to spread its web across New Zealand, Belgium, and Japan through grape exports. The distinctive red stripes or hourglass marks on their black backs are more noticeable in females. Disturb a female, and you'll see how she can defend her eggs. You're likely to get bitten. These spiders can sneak into shoes or clothing, lurking against the victim's skin while they're dressing. Both male and female redbacks have a venomous bite. Their venom is a cocktail of neurotoxins. It can cause sweating, rapid heartbeat, and swollen lymph nodes. The redback has control over the venom dose, so symptoms vary based on how much is injected. Australia deals with over 250 redback bites annually, many requiring antivenom treatment. The latest case, when a person lost their life after being bitten, dates back to 1956. Yet it can happen, so stay vigilant and cautious around these stealthy spiders. Let's talk about the heavyweight champion of the spider world, the Theraphosis blondie, casually known as the Goliath bird eater. This giant tarantula can stretch up to 11 inches and tip the scales at 6 ounces. To put it in perspective, this spider is big enough to cover your dinner plate and is certified by the Guinness World Records. The nickname might make you picture a tarantula feasting on a hummingbird, but that's more of an artistic exaggeration dating back to the 18th century. These spiders are more into munching on arthropods and rarely go for bird snacks. Goliath bird eaters don't bother with webs like their spider buddies. Instead, they're all about silk, using it to line their cozy burrows beneath the forest floor. The spider itself looks dangerous, but its bite almost never requires a doctor's visit. It feels more like a wasp sting. Goliath bird eaters are the biggest spidey on Earth. On the other side of the spectrum, we have this guy from Colombia. They are among the tiniest spider species. Grown-up males of this species are 0.015 inches long, tinier than your average pinhead. Females are usually a bit larger. Well, that was creepy, wasn't it?
In 1991, somewhere in the lush jungles of central Vietnam, a local logger found a mysterious hole among the foliage and bushes. He looked in there and felt a strong wind blowing into his face. Then, he heard a strange sound from the cave depths and realized that it was the sound of a river. The logger didn't check the cave, but decided to go back there with a flashlight and a rope. When he returned, he couldn't find the cave anywhere. He spent a few years searching for it. Finally, in the 2000s, the logger managed to locate it again. In 2009, he brought scientists to this place. They found out the cave, called Sundong, is the largest in the world. There's so much space here that you'll hear a long echo if you shout. Sundong's main passage reaches 660 feet in height in some places, which is more than half as tall as the Empire State Building. The area of the cave is so huge that an entire New York City block with 40-story skyscrapers would fit in there. There's a deep underground labyrinth under the jungles of Vietnam, hiding 3 of the largest caves in the world, and Sindong is number 1 on this list. The vast space inside is filled with various plants, unique microclimates, and different landscapes. There's a real jungle growing underground. It became possible thanks to the collapsed ceiling in some places. It lets sunlight penetrate there from above. There are huge stalactites 250 feet high on the ceilings and walls, which is more than the length of a passenger Boeing. They've been here between hundreds of thousands and millions of years. Some limestone deposits are more than 450 million years old. It means they've existed since the time long before the dinosaurs. Besides the jungle, there are also many rivers in the cave. They were formed because of rainwater coming down from holes in the ceiling. These rivers are smooth and fast, like slides in a water park. But riding them isn't the best idea, since they can carry you into one of those long labyrinths that the cave is full of. And we still don't know where they're going. You may find yourself in another unknown part of the cave. This is what happened in 2018. 3 divers accidentally discovered new areas in Sindong. The cave turned out to be much bigger than everyone thought. They dove into one of the cave's lakes and reached a depth of 256 feet. At the bottom, they found a separate tunnel. Divers lowered a fishing line with a lead weight there and found out that this place reaches a depth of 394 feet, and the tunnel is more than half a mile long. We still don't know the exact size of the tunnel. Sindong also connects to another huge cave. There are lots of things you can see in Sindong besides underground labyrinths and rivers. You can find spacious rooms with lakes, and you can walk for hours along dark mountain corridors. This place is strikingly beautiful, but dangerous at the same time. And the coolest thing is that you can take a walk here. Since 2013, Sindong Cave has been open to tourists. It's not just an easy walk to take some selfies though. The expedition to the cave lasts for several days. For the first day and a half, you'll explore the 3rd largest cave in the world. And only after that, you'll reach Sindong. The path will take you through rivers, dense jungles, mountains, and rocks. You can meet many exotic birds, monkeys, and other animals. And according to many people, the way to the cave is even more impressive than the cave itself. When you reach your destination, you'll spend the next few days exploring Sindong. Together with other tourists, professional guides, and porters, you'll be sleeping in tents in different places in the cave every day. You'll see some stunning landscapes and, get ready for this, 400-million-year-old majestic fossils. There are also dark rooms with lakes that are good for swimming. Such adventurous expeditions become more popular every year. People who visited the cave call it the most amazing place they've ever seen. Another amazing cave is located in Indonesia, on the island of Flores. It's quite small, but holds amazing things inside. In 2003, a group of scientists discovered ancient artifacts here, including fossils of primitive tools, such as sharpened stones. Scientists realized that hundreds of thousands of years ago, this place was home to our distant ancestors. Then they found a very unusual female skeleton. That woman was only 3.5 feet tall. This is the height of the waistline of an average adult person. That woman had no problems with her spine or with the development of her bones, though. This and other skeletons found in the cave belong to some unknown human ancestors. Scientists called this species Homo floresiensis, or simply, Hobbit. The woman's weight was about 35 to 79 pounds. Analysis of the skull and bones showed she was about 30 years old. Hobbits probably lived on Earth between 190,000 and 50,000 years ago. There's a chance they met the ancestors of modern humans. The next cave is in Turkey. Imagine that you live in an old house and decide to make some repairs. You throw all the old stuff out of the rooms. The last place to sort out is your basement. You've hardly ever visited it and have no idea what's hidden there. But it's pretty spacious, so you decide to turn it into a room. You tear down the wall and discover the entrance to the cave. This is a tunnel that leads underground. You walk through the cave and see a real underground city. This happened in Turkey in 1963. One of the locals discovered a secret passage to a lost city in his basement. About 20,000 people could live there. There was enough space for livestock and food supplies. It's not just a maze of tunnels. There's a chapel, a school, stables, kitchens, walls, and other signs of civilization. The city was built in the Byzantine era, in the years 780 through 1180. It's not the only one down there and is connected to many underground tunnels and towns that stretch for several miles. Let's finish our journey in the strangest and most frightening cave. We're going to the southeast of Romania, near the Black Sea. Here, on a desolate wide plain, you can find a hole. This is a tunnel leading deep underground. The air inside the cave has high levels of hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide. Under normal conditions, the air we breathe contains around 20% oxygen, but it's only 10% here. You won't be able to breathe freely without an oxygen tank. The water and air here are poisoned. Almost no animals are able to live in such conditions, at least the ones we know about. And this cave is filled with 48 species of living organisms, 33 of which are new unknown species. Creeping things that live here can scare you, especially if you're afraid of bugs. Strange white snails and white spiders are crawling along the walls. An unknown species of leeches and transparent shrimp are swimming in the water. White millipedes with huge mustaches are creeping on the ground. Here you can also meet an unknown kind of scorpion with a transparent white body that doesn't look like any other kind of scorpion. Nothing here looks like ordinary animals at all. All creatures in the cave are white or transparent. They don't have eyes, but they have long paws and antennae whiskers that help to navigate in space. Plants can't live here without sunlight and clean air. This means that oxygen isn't produced in this place. So how do these creatures manage to survive? The answer is in the water. The surface of the lake and puddles here is covered with strangely moving foam. This substance is a living organism. It consists of 1 billion bacteria called autotrophs. Ordinary plants absorb carbon dioxide and use photosynthesis to produce oxygen. This cave is filled with carbon dioxide. Autotrophs absorb it and secrete tiny food particles. Bacteria feed on these particles. Larger organisms then feed on those bacteria, and so on. In the end, there's enough food for everyone. This process is called chemosynthesis. It's like photosynthesis, but uses water instead of sunlight in its chemical reactions. In this cave, evolution has created a completely unique biological system, separate from the rest of the world.
Well, if you don't have enough to worry about, here's another fear unlocked. You might turn into the next meal of a meat-eating plant. This type of plant has appeared in video games like Super Mario. That's why it looks familiar. So, we wonder here at Brightside, what would happen if a hypothetical giant Venus flytrap captured you? After all, these plants aren't picky eaters. They have sensitive trigger hairs, which cause the plant's iconic hinged jaws to snap shut. Its leaves are equipped with tiny bristle-like structures that interlock when the trap closes, making it difficult for prey to escape. Once it happens, the plant begins secreting digestive enzymes to break down the prey's soft tissue. The digestion process in carnivorous plants takes several days. During that time, the plant extracts nutrients from the dissolved prey. In our hypothetical situation, it would take a long time for the plant to consume you, and since the process would be extremely slow, most likely you'd be able to free yourself before significant harm occurs. In any scenario, it would be extremely hard for the plant to digest a human completely. The anatomy and digestive processes of Venus flytraps are adapted to deal with insects, not large animals like you. Even if they were larger, they would still not be able to eat you. Comforting? Somewhat. The Venus flytrap primarily consumes insects, spiders, and other small invertebrates. Researchers have found out that this plant can digest small pieces of human flesh, but the largest representatives measure just a few inches. So it's highly unlikely for a Venus flytrap or similar carnivorous plant to pose any serious threat to humans. Barry Rice is an astrobiologist from California, and he thought about this question too. In a rather cringe-worthy experiment, Rice applied his Venus flytraps with skin fragments peeled from his toes affected by the athlete's foot infection. Those skin pieces, divided into 4 equal portions, were carefully inserted into the jaws of 4 Venus flytrap plants. After a week, Rice cautiously pried open the plant's mouth to assess the progress. To his surprise, the skin chunks were nearly completely digested, contrary to his initial expectation of them remaining intact. It means that Venus flytraps can indeed consume human flesh. Yet the prospect of these plants engulfing an entire human is unequivocally dismissed. Rice restricted his experiments to a specific tissue type, and there's no indication that the plant could break down sturdier components like bone or cartilage. The size limitations and the slow digestion process also act in favor of the person's survival. Now, when it comes to size, Venus flytraps can grow to about 5 inches in diameter. Each plant has about 6 stems with leaves that are hinged and lined with tooth-like edges. These flytraps are originally from North and South Carolina. But at one point, they decided to take a trip, and now you can see them in places like Florida and New Jersey. They like the moist, acidic soil vibe found in forest understories. They need loads of humidity and sunlight to thrive. They lure insects with their reddish-lined leaves and sweet-smelling nectar. When a bug lands on their jaws, they don't snap shut right away. This process turns into a 20-second dance show. The petals stay open if the bug doesn't make at least 2 moves. It prevents random debris from getting trapped. On the second move, the plant goes from a happy convex shape to a hungry concave one, closing its jaws in less than a second. The bristles on the leaves act like jail bars, keeping the insect from pulling a Houdini. On the third move, digestion mode activates. Juices break down the bug. The plant reopens after 5 to 12 days, and whatever couldn't be digested just falls out. Actually, you can give a Venus flytrap a little touch without hurting yourself. In fact, they're pretty soft to the touch. Yes, these types of plants can't eat us, but it doesn't mean they're not spooky. For instance, this gigantic carnivorous plant can even devour rodents. It was discovered in the Philippines. The pitcher plant, rated as the world's second largest, can reach over 16 feet in height. It attracts prey with special nectar around its mouth. Once an animal is lured in, the plant's fluid, which contains enzymes and acids, starts breaking down the drowned victim's carcass. While such plants can eat rats and frogs, cultivating them as mousetraps is impractical due to the sheer number of mice in urban areas. Here's how plants become meat eaters. Around 70 million years ago, during the era of dinosaurs, certain plants underwent a genetic mutation that turned them into carnivores. In a study, researchers explored the evolution of carnivorous plants, focusing on 3 related species: the Venus flytrap, the water wheel plant, and the sundew. First, the plant's entire genetic code doubled, which allowed its genes to become more varied. Some genes changed to make traps out of leaves and use roots for catching prey. As the plants got nutrients from the prey, it didn't need as many genes for regular leaves and roots. Over time, evolution fine-tuned the roots and leaves for trapping. This shows how plants that hadn't been carnivores before changed to become really good at catching and eating animals. It helped them survive in soils that didn't have many nutrients by getting nutrients from the animals they caught. Now, carnivorous plants are rare, but they are a big family. There are more than 700 species found all around the world on every continent except Antarctica. They're not just hanging out in damp swamps and jungles. North America takes the crown for the highest number of different carnivorous plant species. We're so proud of that. Venus flytraps are the ones with the iconic snap trap. Pitcher plants, on the other hand, work with a pitfall trap. It's straightforward. Their leaves are hollow and filled with water and digestive acids. Any bug that falls in ends up drowning and being slowly digested over time. Some pitcher plants have waxy leaves to make bugs slide inside more easily, while others use chemicals to reduce water tension, making any insect that lands in their trap instantly sink and drown. Let's move on to sticky traps. Some plants, like sundews, use active sticky traps. They have tentacles all over their leaves that stick to insects. The tentacles close when an insect lands on them, suffocating the bug. Then there are passive sticky traps. Think of them like sticky mouse traps in a garage. Insects that land on these tiny sticky tentacles just get stuck, and the plant sends out digestive acids to turn them into a liquid snack. Now let's get to the showstopper, suction traps. Bladderworts are the stars here, pulling in bugs and other prey faster than you can blink twice. They love snacking on mosquito larvae. But big ones can even grab small tadpoles by the tail and devour them from bottom to top. Have you had your lunch yet? Okay. Then there's the lobster pot trap. This one is a unique trap where the plant's roots are hollow and have openings. Sharp hairs force tiny bugs and larvae into the roots. The bugs can't turn around and they end up heading straight for the plant's stomach. Fun fact: not all carnivorous plants need digestive enzymes. Some team up with helpful bacteria and focus on physical traps instead. Carnivorous plants don't grow only on land. There are underwater ones too. The water wheel plant and bladderworts live beneath the surface. Even deserts have their own carnivorous plant players. If you see carnivorous plants in the wild, resist the urge to take them home. Unfortunately, many of these plants are endangered because people poach them from their natural habitats. Even the famous Venus flytrap is at risk of extinction. There are no carnivorous plants dangerous for us humans, but this one might give you a fright because of its terrifying appearance. On the other hand, it may help you resist the temptation to take these plants home as souvenirs. Sweet dreams! Australia used to have its own giants. Those were huge animals that could have dwarfed anything living on this continent these days. Scientists found the remains of many of those ancient creatures in the Narracuta Caves in South Australia, 4 hours away from Adelaide. It's a lovely region, but it can be treacherous. Watch out for holes the ground is pocked with. Known as pitfall traps, many of them are no wider than a coffee table. They're deep and plunge into the darkest of caverns. One of such caverns is called Victoria Fossil Cave, and it's a treasury that's been hiding the bones of around 45,000 animals for centuries. Some of the oldest bones belong to creatures far more terrifying than any animal you can encounter today. Those were the ancient Australian megafauna, huge beasts that roamed the continent during the Pleistocene epoch. During those, there were giant snakes, huge flightless birds, wombat-like creatures the size of a rhinoceros, and many others. One of the largest examples of the Australian megafauna scientists have discovered so far is the Diprotodon. That giant herbivorous creature was 10 feet long and 6.5 feet tall, and weighed more than 6,000 pounds, about as much as a small Asian elephant. Even though this terrifying beast didn't eat meat, it could have smashed other animals with its sheer weight. Scientists have found the remains of hundreds of such creatures all over Australia, so it's safe to say that no other animal from that time or in that location was larger than this giant. Despite its creepy appearance, the Diprotodon was a relative to the modern-day wombat, and those are known to sometimes pounce humans. The Diprotodon had toes that pointed inward and were well suited for digging burrows. On the other hand, Diprotodon was a giant, and it was unlikely that it used to do so. It was likely a trait it had inherited from its smaller burrowing ancestors, or it could have used its claws to search for roots. This theory is supported by the fact that the animal's pouch was facing backward. It prevented any dirt from collecting inside while the creature was digging. Since this animal was so big, it didn't have to worry much about predators. Up until 60,000 years ago, when the first humans appeared on the continent, full-grown Diprotodons only had to look out for creatures like the quincana. Measuring in at a whopping 20 feet long, the quincana was a land crocodile. It lived in Australia from around 20 million to 40,000 years ago. It disappeared along with most other mega creatures of the last ice age. It's thought to be the result of the first humans coming to the continent. Even though the quincana was extremely fast and dangerous, it was possible that this creature got outcompeted by human hunters who took all available prey. Unlike modern crocodiles that are mainly aquatic, that mighty beast was a land dweller. Scientists figured it out by studying the quincana's legs. They were able to support and carry the body clear off the ground. It means there was no escape for ancient people once the quincana spotted them. Modern crocodiles can only push themselves along on their bellies. Such an adaptation allowed the quincana to chase its prey for long periods of time, exhausting it in the process. Another creepy feature of this ancient monster was its teeth. Aquatic crocs have conical teeth. Those are great for gripping and holding on to prey underwater. But quincana had knife-like teeth, ideal for slicing soft-bodied animals like, mammals. Another Australian monster, Thylacoleo, wasn't all that large, but it didn't make it any less terrifying. It was still among the top predators and the biggest carnivorous animals in Australia. This creature was a true oddity of nature, even by prehistoric standards. First, its teeth resembled not those of a regular predator, but those of a rodent. Its front incisors were enlarged, taking the place of canines. Premolars were also shaped like blades. They were used for cutting flesh and bone. At first, scientists thought that Thylacoleo used those teeth to eat nuts and fruits. But later, a study showed that the use of such teeth was better suited on necks and spines. The jaws of this ancient creature were immensely powerful. A 220-pound Thylacoleo had a bite force similar to that of a present-day 550-pound lion. It means that the animal could easily bring down prey much larger than itself. Then there was Thylacoleo's tail. It had strong muscles which provided the animal with the ability to use the tail as support when tackling large prey. The Thylacoleo had retractable claws, and this feature is very uncommon among marsupials. It allowed the animal to keep its razor-sharp hooks from getting blunt and could help it get a better grip on its prey. Scientists are quite sure that, like today's leopards, the Thylacoleo could climb trees and jump on other animals from above. It was done so fast and stealthily, they never knew what hit them. The creature's rear feet support this theory. The first toe there was reduced, but the foot had a rough pad like what modern-day possums have. It allowed them to have a better grip while climbing. Right after scientists found the first skull of the Meliolania, this animal was classified as a lizard. That's why its name translates to small groomer. But after they discovered more complete fossils, it turned out that the Meliolania was a giant turtle. But that's not all. It was one of the largest land turtles to ever have existed. The main reason researchers initially believed the creature to be a lizard was the fact that its skull was adorned with a series of spikes. It's something the modern-day horned lizard can boast. But even after discovering the true nature of the Meliolania, scientists still don't know how to properly catalog it. It might have been a creature that folded its neck under its spine, or it could have folded it to the side. Beside those defensive mechanisms on its head, the Meliolania was also equipped with a spiked tail, which was probably used to prevent predators from attacking the animal from behind. Most species of the Meliolania disappeared around 2,000 to 3,000 years ago because of humans who hunted them to extinction in both Australia and on the surrounding islands. It took around 2 centuries for these turtles to go extinct in that region of the globe. The Megalania was a giant Australian lizard that existed at the end of the Pleistocene epoch. It looked like a Komodo dragon and the Australian monitor lizard, which are both believed to be Megalania's closest living relatives. Fossils tell us that the ancient animal was anywhere from 15 to 26 feet in length. Ow! The youngest fossil remains of this ancient Australian monitor lizard date back to about 50,000 years ago. The first indigenous settlers must have encountered Megalania, which led to the lizard's extinction. Originally, scientists thought that the Megalania was the only member of the genus Megalania, but these days it belongs to the genus Varanus, which means that the prehistoric creature is closely related to other Australian monitor lizards. Our next giant creature on our list was once dubbed an ostrich on steroids. I mean, look at it. It was the last of the thunderbirds to go extinct in Australia. The Genyorus lived on the continent at the same time as early humans. They might have coexisted for 15,000 years or so before the huge bird eventually disappeared. This theory has some proof. The bird's fossils found along with human artifacts. Some cave paintings also depict flightless birds similar to the Genyorus in size and shape. Although it wasn't the largest bird in Australia, the goose-like creature was still as tall as a grown-up man and weighed around 550 pounds. Even a modern-day ostrich can be dangerous if it feels threatened. Imagine meeting its giant prehistoric relative. Scientists are still arguing about its diet. Many believe the creature was an herbivore, but there's still a chance that the Genyornis was a partial scavenger. Its small, stubby wings and powerful hoof-like legs hint that the bird could have been a plant eater. But its huge beak and exceptionally deep lower jaw evoke suspicion. Such features are highly unusual in birds.
You're going to Ilha de Queimada Grande, one of the most dangerous islands in the world. There, you find yourself among rainforests, huge rocks, and grasslands. The place is home to birds, locusts, and giant cockroaches. But there's one more animal, and because of it, the island got its notorious reputation. Snakes live there, and a lot of them. So many that the place is also known as Snake Island. Will you survive there? Located just 20 miles away from the coast of Brazil, the island has an area of 43 hectares, or over 100 acres. It probably got cut off from the mainland after the last ice age. The snakes were also separated from most other animal species. They didn't have competitors and had an unlimited source of food. In such a small area, there are up to 4,000 snakes. That's one snake for every 10 square feet. It would be a difficult feat not to come across a snake on this island. Not only is this snake, the golden lancehead, one of the most numerous on the island, but it's also a highly venomous pit viper species. And it's also one of the most venomous in all of Latin America. Its venom is so potent due to the isolation of the species, with only birds sharing the land with them. To catch these birds, the snake's venom needed to become extra strong. And indeed, since they got separated from their distant relatives, their venom has become up to 5 times more powerful. Most of the time, these snakes hide in the trees or amongst leaves on the ground. If you find yourself stranded here, you'll want to keep yourself a safe distance away. Snakes mainly use their sense of smell and rely on vibrations. If you get too close to one, either stand still or slowly walk away. If you make too many vibrations, this will make them feel threatened, causing them to strike. If you spot them a safe distance away, or if you're walking toward tall grass, stamp your feet a couple of times. This will notify snakes of your presence. They won't risk taking down prey larger than they are and will likely slither away. Carrying a stick is always a good idea, just in case you happen to come across a snake accidentally. This way, you'll have an extension of your arm that cannot be bitten. This simple thing might save your life. A stick with a V shape on the end will give you even more advantage. Even if a snake starts acting aggressively, holding it down will stop it in its tracks. But whatever happens, don't try to pick it up. Okay, but what if you get bitten? The chances are pretty high on this island, of course. First of all, don't try to get the venom out on your own. Make sure you call emergency services immediately. And once help is on the way, apply a wide bandage. A piece of clothing will do if you don't have anything else. Don't try to chase the snake trying to identify the species. Emergency services know how to figure out what venom it is. Now, just keep calm and wait for help. You might be wondering who you can call on this abandoned island. Well, since it's strictly prohibited to visit this place, there are signs advising to stay away all over the island, along with a number you can call if you run into trouble. Let's say you've successfully avoided getting bitten. The next thing to consider is what you can eat there. Snake Island was previously known as Ilha de Queimada Grande, where queimada is Portuguese for forest being lit up, or forest fire. The reason for that was the fact that the entire island was deliberately set on fire to make room for a banana plantation. Unfortunately, the banana business didn't turn out to be a success, probably because farmers got sick and tired of snakes. But some banana trees still thrive today, and they can provide you with some much-needed nutrients. You'll also want some protein in your diet throughout your stay. Luckily, along with the snakes trapped on the island, there are also cockroaches. These giant prehistoric-looking roaches come out at night to feed on plants. Get that barbecue started and enjoy the rare delicacy this island provides. A great way to survive on the island is to avoid it altogether. If by chance you happen to be sailing past, keep in mind that this place was once connected to the mainland. Rocks beneath the waves are very likely to damage the bottom of your boat if you get too close. Make sure you keep an appropriate distance when traveling past. Sure, this island is intriguing, but please remember that no matter how close you get to it, you won't be able to see snakes from the boat. You can only see these creatures if you get close enough, which you really shouldn't do. And it's not only reptiles that make this location dangerous. Pirates visit the island quite often. Not the sea shanty singing peg-legged arr pirates, but bio-pirates who come there to capture the very thing that makes it so dangerous. They come there for snakes, to catch them and sell them illegally. Since the island got cut off around 11,000 years ago, the golden lancehead has evolved within its own unique habitat. So, although there are many reptiles on this island, they're still an endangered species. Due to their limited numbers, their value is very high, reaching up to $30,000 on illegal markets, which gives biopirates the motivation to catch them. I can think of better ways to make a living. Anyway, let's say you've got all the resources necessary to survive in one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Do you think you would manage this feat? Perhaps you think it's impossible. You'd be surprised at how possible it can be, if you know what you're doing. It turns out many have visited this scary place before. Research teams often come there. They study the golden lancehead snake, its environment, and its food sources for conservation purposes. But scientists always make sure there's a doctor on the team. There's also a lighthouse on Snake Island. It had been operated by people until the 1920s. Then it became automated. One guess why. Brazilian authorities visit the lighthouse once a year to make sure it's still functional. Locals on the mainland know the reputation of the island, so the stories of people going missing are minimal. But one group of fishers once got too close to the island. As they were sailing along their normal route, they accidentally neared the shore. Their boat hit a rock under the waves and began filling with water. As the boat was quickly sinking, the men had only two options: to try to survive in the rough sea or swim to the shores of Snake Island. It was a hard choice to make. After all, they had heard the stories, and it wasn't just about snakes. Rumor had it that the island was cursed. Regardless of the stories, the fishers chose to take their chances with Snake Island. After making it to the shore, they tried to be careful. Their knowledge of the island could help them survive. Most importantly, they knew to avoid the rainforest at all costs. As the men got hungry, they carefully walked along the edge of the forest, warily collecting bananas. They were mostly sitting, waiting, and conserving their energy. They could only drink water when it rained. It was just enough to sustain them. They slept on the beach, unprotected from the elements and weather. And all the time, they were so close to the comfort of the lighthouse or caves. They were probably overly cautious, but it was either enduring some discomfort or risking their lives for a dry bed. They didn't yield to the temptation. They managed to survive for 3 days without being bitten by a snake. After that, a passing boat finally rescued them. So, now you know, anything is possible.
So if you see a rainbow, that means you're in for some good luck. But if you see a deep sea fish, this means that something tragic is about to happen. Let's have a look at ancient lores and what they might mean IRL. In August 2020, people started out their day just like any other in California. It was sunny, so they decided to soak in the sun at the beach. They were snorkeling and kayaking when one of them spotted something out of the ordinary: a doomsday fish. The creature was 12 feet long. It's known as an oarfish, and only about 20 of them have washed up in California since 1901. Oarfishes live in obscure parts of the ocean, but why are they linked to doomsday? Japanese folklore says they are harbingers of disaster. These creatures were once thought to be sea serpents, and they are known as the messenger of the beautiful palace at the bottom of the ocean. The thing is, they only left the beautiful palace to warn humans about a disaster. That's why they're mainly known as bad omens. And when you see one, you can expect to see a tsunami or an earthquake right after. Even oceanographers confirm that this is a famous association. Now here's where it gets weird. The oarfish washed up near San Diego shores on the 10th of August. And then, on the 12th of August, a magnitude 4.4 earthquake hit Los Angeles. That's not the first time it happened. In 2011, in Japan, about 20 oarfishes were found stranded on the beaches and coastlines of Tehuco. Right after that, a magnitude 9 earthquake and tsunami hit the city. Something similar happened in the Philippines. On February 8, 2017, an oarfish was seen. 2 days later, a magnitude 6.7 earthquake struck the city and its nearby provinces. Sure, there is no way to prove both events are connected. The Seismological Society of America is adamant in saying that this is pure superstition. A recent study analyzed the coincidences and concluded that this association is statistically untrue. Can we say this happened literally out of the blue? Humans have historically noticed animals acting strange right before natural disasters. Earthquakes, floods, even tsunamis. It's like animals can sense something we can't. In fact, there's a lot of science to back it up. Studies show that animals can detect subtle environmental changes, like shifts in the Earth's electromagnetic field or infrasonic sounds, things humans wouldn't notice. This happens because most animals have a wider hearing range than humans and have extra sensitive senses that help them detect gases emitted from the Earth. This theory got famous after the tragic tsunami that destroyed several cities and villages in Indonesia back in 2004. Most man-made warning systems shut down and didn't serve their role of warning humans about the disaster. Sensors were out of action due to maintenance, while other coastal areas simply didn't have any tsunami warning systems. Terrible timing, I know. Still, minutes and hours before the 30-foot wave hit the city, some animals sensed the danger and fled. Eyewitnesses say that elephants ran for higher ground, while flamingos abandoned their low nesting areas and dogs refused to go outdoors. A local reported that he saw a herd of buffalo turning their ears toward the sea and then stampeded to the top of a hill. A lot of the people that survived the tsunami used animals as their warning systems. Now, this is not the first time humans have relied on animals to save their lives. The first official account of when it happened dates back to 373 BCE. I wasn't around then, but the Greek historian Euclides reports how the local population saw rats, weasels, and snakes running from the town before a massive earthquake hit. So, what exactly is it that animals can sense that humans can't? To find that out, scientists put biologging tags on cows, sheep, and dogs living in Italy. For about half a year, they tracked the animals. During this time, official statistics recorded over 18,000 quakes in the region. The most shocking information was that animals began to change their behaviors up to 20 hours before an earthquake. Before an earthquake, something called positive holes happen. It's an electric charge that flows from the crust up to the surface of the Earth. They can change the air molecules above where they appear, and animals can pick up on them. There's also evidence that animals might sense changes in groundwater. Before earthquakes, the stress in fault lines can release radon gas, which could alter the chemistry of groundwater. Animals that rely on it might detect these changes and react. Birds are also super sensitive to shifts in the Earth's magnetic field, which can change just before a quake. Another research happened near Mount Etna. Located in Sicily, Italy, it's one of the most active volcanoes on the planet. In 2002, a massive eruption wiped out a ski lift, 2 hotels, and a series of shops located near Etna. So, over the past years, a group of researchers decided to track goats living next to Etna. Their big aha moment came in 2012, when the goats started to act erratically 6 hours before Etna started to spew lava. These researchers were able to retrospectively predict around 7 disasters over the course of 2 years, all thanks to these goats. Back in 2014, a group of scientists studying golden-winged warblers in Tennessee noticed something odd. The birds had taken a detour from their customary breeding grounds. These little birds flew 435 miles from the Cumberland Mountains, where they had just arrived after flying over 3,000 miles from South America. Right after the birds left, a series of more than 80 tornadoes struck the area, causing over $1 billion in damage. What these birds did is something scientists call an evacuation migration. They sensed the tornadoes coming from over 250 miles away. Infrasound is a big disaster giveaway. Storms and tornadoes make very strong infrasounds that can travel thousands of miles from the storm. Now, infrasounds are low-range frequencies, anything ranging below 20 Hz. With our normal set of human ears, we would never hear this. We have an average hearing that ranges from 20 Hz to 20,000 Hz. That means you can hear something like a very, very low bass note or as loud as the buzzing of a mosquito right next to your ear. An elephant's hearing range can reach below 20 Hz. This would make elephants expert at detecting disasters. Scientists also think that detecting infrasound is what helps birds dodge storms when they must cross the ocean. You see, the Pacific Ocean is known to not be at all passive. Although courageous humans venture to cross it, they're usually met with severe storms and conditions that their satellite instruments sometimes can't detect. Meanwhile, there's an ongoing project from France's National Museum of Natural History that is tracking more than 100 birds on their annual crossing over the Pacific. With the help of the International Space Station, they're trying to understand how these little creatures respond to natural hazards en route. But not everyone's convinced. Some scientists argue that while animals might be sensitive to environmental shifts, predicting disasters based on their behavior is too risky. The U.S. Geological Survey has pointed out that many reported cases of unusual animal behavior before disasters are anecdotal, meaning stories and reports, and large-scale studies have yet to prove a direct link. Although humans don't have these super capabilities of predicting disasters, we have some things that might help us. Notice this. The next time you're in a place where lightning is going to hit, your hair will give a sign. If it stands on end, this means that lightning is aimed toward your beautiful person and is about to hit you. So run, find shelter, get inside a house. That's the best you can do in a situation like this.
In 2016, 2 researchers were trekking through the forests of Arunachal Pradesh, India, when they literally stumbled upon this camouflaged beauty hidden in the leaves. A local man pointed out the snake, and they quickly realized it wasn't just any average viper. With its unusual pointed snout, similar to a hump-nosed viper, and a stunning orange belly, this snake had them scratching their heads. Back at camp, they took a closer look and knew they'd found something special. DNA tests at the Indian Institute of Science confirmed it. They found a brand new species, now known scientifically as Trimeresurus arunachalensis. But the snake's unique features didn't stop there. The snake's paired reproductive organ was unlike any other viper, and its scale pattern was completely unique. While its closest relative has around 20 rows of scales around the middle of its body, this mysterious snake had only 17. The next species is a record breaker, and it's known as the largest gecko ever discovered, measuring around 2 feet long and being as thick as a man's wrist. The only known specimen of Delcourt's giant gecko is currently in France, but its exact origins are still a little bit of a puzzle. At first, people thought it might be from New Zealand because some local legends spoke of a giant, mysterious lizard that lived in forests. Even though it was a pretty fascinating theory, some recent DNA studies suggest that this nocturnal species is probably from New Caledonia. But as of now, no one can confirm it 100%. In general, sleeper sharks are big, slow-moving creatures that mostly hang out in deep, cold ocean waters. They usually have bulky bodies and a broad, flat head, which helps them blend into the dark sea. But in 2017, was caught at a fishing harbor and collected from a fish market located in Taiwan, and it didn't look like any of its relatives. First off, This 4.4-foot shark had smaller eyes and a tiny second dorsal fin compared to its cousins. It also had more rows of teeth in its upper jaw and fewer in the lower jaw. But the biggest surprise was that it was a pregnant female, carrying 33 embryos. This means there are probably more of these sharks hiding out there in the deep ocean. We just haven't found them yet. Meet the pocket shark. It is tiny, just about 5.5 inches long, while most deepwater sharks are around 6.5 feet. But don't let its small size make you underestimate it, because this creature is definitely one of the ocean's coolest secrets. Discovered in 1979 in the deep waters of Chile, this tiny shark is like a real-life spy gadget with its mysterious pockets near its front fins. These pockets are large, measuring about 4% of its body length, and are believed to either glow or secrete pheromones. So, this shark might actually light up to either confuse predators or attract prey in the dark depths. And when I say deep, I mean really deep. It is believed that this creature hangs out over 9,000 feet down, which is roughly the height of 7 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other, but inside the ocean. Besides its initial discovery in Chile, it was spotted again in 2010 in the Gulf of Mexico, but it hasn't shown up since. The pocket shark is not the only glowing animal we're talking about today. This inch-long cockroach, scientifically known as Luchihormetica lucae, was actually first collected back in 1939, but only got its moment in the spotlight decades later in 2012. What makes this little buddy so interesting is that it uses bioluminescence, meaning it has spots that light up in the dark. Unlike fireflies that mostly use their glow to find a mate, this cockroach uses its light to mimic a toxic click beetle and scare off predators. Unfortunately, the region in Ecuador where it was found was hit hard by a volcanic eruption, raising fears that this glowing marvel might be a one-of-a-kind discovery. Continuing with tiny creatures, meet Hippocampus minotaur, also known as the bull-neck seahorse. This little seahorse stands out with its wide neck, large head, and small body, which is why it's got the Minotaur nickname. The only known specimens were collected off the coast of Eden, Australia, and no one has ever seen it alive in its natural habitat. So that's why we don't know much about its day-to-day life. Some studies suggest it lives deep underwater, around 325 feet down, which is roughly the equivalent to the height of a 30-story building. It's believed this mysterious seahorse likes to wrap its prehensile tail around corals and might even hide in sand beds. Its yellow-orange color likely helps it blend into coral reefs. So spotting this intriguing creature in the ocean is pretty much like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Next on our list is the Nariño cat. In 1989, a single specimen of this mysterious spotted feline was discovered in Galeras volcano in southern Colombia. This little guy had a short tail with 7 black rings and a black tip, and its fur was absolutely unique, being more reddish than that of its relatives. Understanding that it wasn't an ordinary animal, researchers decided to visit a bunch of museums all over Latin America to find similar felines, but they came up pretty empty-handed. Then, DNA analysis confirmed that it was unlike any other known cat, having split from its closest relatives around 1.9 million years ago. The Bogota sun angel is a hummingbird with a stunning purple color and black flight feathers, plus a bright green chin and crown. For years, we only knew of one specimen that was bought in Bogota, Colombia back in 1909, and that was pretty much it. Nobody knew much more about this beautiful and mysterious bird. But that changed in 2017, when a study decided to analyze its DNA once again. The results suggest that the Bogota sun angel might not be a completely separate species after all. It looks like it is actually a hybrid, meaning it was a mix of hummingbirds from 2 different species. And it's likely that its mother was a long-tailed sylph, which is a gorgeous hummingbird that mostly lives in the Andes in South America. The spotted green pigeon, also known as the Liverpool pigeon, is like the unicorn of the bird world. It was first described in 1783 by an English physician named John Latham, who saw it once and that's it. Since then, no one has ever doubted that it was a pigeon, and many researchers were convinced it was a distinct species. But recent DNA studies revealed that this bird could actually be closely related to the famous dodo. You know, that chubby, flightless bird from Mauritius that looked like a giant pigeon with a quirky beak. Anyway, the Liverpool pigeon is about 13 inches long and has a unique look with yellow spotted feathers. Unlike its ground-loving cousin, the Nicobar pigeon, the spotted green pigeon was likely more of a tree hugger, feasting on fruits up in the branches. Today, if you want to see this rare bird, you'll have to visit the World Museum in Liverpool, where the only known specimen resides. While you're in England, make sure to swing by London and check out the Natural History Museum. There, you will find the only specimen of a flying fox known scientifically as Pteropus bruneus. Flying foxes are usually some of the largest bats in the world. Their body length, I mean their size excluding their wings, can be around 16 inches. But this special bat, discovered in 1874 at Percy Island, is more like a mini version of its cousins, measuring 8.3 inches from head to toe. So even though it hasn't been spotted in the wild for a while, I wouldn't worry too much if you happen to come across it.
Now, if Earth's history were a movie, we humans would only take up the last second of the end credits. Our planet has been around for about 4.6 billion years, but our human story began about 300,000 years ago in Africa. Now, our ancestors had some wild adventures in nature. They could have run into creatures so big they'd make today's elephants look like puppies. The woolly mammoth is a pretty famous animal, sure. His cousin, though, the Columbian mammoth, not so much. This giant used to roam places from Canada all the way down to Mexico. Unlike the furrier woolly mammoths, which hung out in colder places, these animals had shorter hair, resembling huge elephants. They also had incredibly large tusks, like 12 feet worth of spiraling, sturdy tusks. And they weren't just for show, they came in handy when facing predators. That includes our ancestors. If you think about sloths these days, you're picturing these adorably slow creatures. They couldn't possibly be in your list of most dangerous animals. Well, their grandparents might have. For starters, we call them ground sloths, and they vary a lot in size. Some were as big as rhinos, and others, like the Megatherium, were as colossal as elephants. Imagine seeing a 20-foot-long sloth which doesn't mind chewing on some meat every now and then, at least in theory. Ever heard of Bigfoot? Well, our next animal kind of looks like him, but is a distant cousin to orangutans. Meet Gigantopithecus, the largest primate to ever call our planet its home. Standing tall at 10 feet and weighing more than 600 pounds, these animals were amazing to look at in real life. Unlike Bigfoot, they weren't constantly hiding. In fact, it's believed they were peaceful and gentle creatures. Sadly, they faded away about 100,000 years ago, mainly because their food sources slowly became unavailable. Those lush, fruity forests they called home eventually turned into dry grasslands. Next on our list is the cave hyena. Weighing a chunky 250 pounds and standing 3 feet tall, these beasts were as long as a grown-up lying down. What's even more interesting about these creatures is that they loved hanging out in groups. A pack could be as big as 30 of these animals, which meant they could easily take on even the biggest, heaviest mastodons. Our ancient families would have needed to stay alert around these hungry specimens. Sadly, for these hyenas about 20,000 years ago, their numbers started going down. Soon enough, they completely disappeared from the planet. Quick pop quiz. What's called a tiger but isn't really one? It's the saber-toothed tiger. I mean, sure, they belong to the feline family, but they aren't technically tigers. First appearing around 42 million years ago, in July, I think. Many of their kind were gone before we even showed up. However, early Americans might have bumped into a couple of specimens from this group. If that really happened, it would have been quite the encounter. Think of the biggest wild lion today or the hefty Siberian tiger. These big cats also had some incredible features hidden in their fur. They were good at sneaking around, hiding, and pouncing on mammoths bigger than themselves. Their bite wasn't that strong, but they could open their jaws wide, like twice as much as a lion. And although their teeth were a bit on the weak side, they had buff forearms to pin down their dinner, giving those big fangs a purpose. Not the kind of kitty you'd want to play with. Dire wolves made their debut about 250,000 years ago. They were like the gray wolves we know today, but a lot stronger. While wolves these days stretch out to about 6 feet and tip the scales at 170 pounds max, dire wolves were about 5 feet and about 150 pounds. Found all over North and South America, they had admirable jaws, biting nearly a third harder than their modern counterparts. Also, their favorite snack was horses. But just like many other majestic beasts of the past, they faded away around 10,000 years ago. Now, names can be deceiving. Take the American lion, for example. It's not really a lion, it's more of a panther's big cousin. The other part of the name is correct, though. They did live in America about 330,000 years ago. This feline was no lap cat either. They were at the top of the wildcat pyramid, weighing a colossal 772 pounds. That's like stacking 4 grown men on a scale. Even the mighty African lion would look a tad bit shy beside these beasts. With the muscle to take down a bison, you wouldn't want to accidentally interrupt their dinner. They parted ways with this planet around 11,000 years ago, right after the last ice age. Now, down in Australia, about 50,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, there lurked a relative of the Komodo dragon, the Megalania. Experts love to have debates on how big it was. Some say it stretched out to 23 feet. Others think it was just about 11 feet long. Either way, they were basically mega-sized Komodo dragons with a dangerous bite. If you think bears are already big and fluffy now, let's introduce the short-faced bear. While this big creature stood on its hind legs, it towered at 14 feet. With long limbs, they could outrun today's bears, hitting speeds up to 40 miles per hour. These ultra bears sadly disappeared around 11,600 years ago. Now imagine a crocodile. Okay, imagine that same crocodile, only supersized, with sporty legs, doing its thing in Australia about 1.6 million years ago. Well, say hello to the quincana. These crocs were extremely large, reaching 23 feet. And no, they weren't lazy river loungers. These creatures really loved spending time on land. They evolved to have strong legs for their chases and razor-sharp teeth designed for slicing, not gripping. When did we stop sharing beaches with them? About 40,000 years ago. The name elephant bird might not sound familiar, but try to picture a bird that stood tall as high as a basketball hoop at 10 feet and weighed as much as a small car, 1,500 pounds. Their eggs were equally huge, like 150 chicken eggs bundled up into one. Now, as amazing as these birds sound, there's a lot we still don't know about them. They're hard to study, as most extinct animals are. Still, some recent studies have given us some clues. Scientists have been examining ancient molecules from their fossilized eggshells. It's an awesome piece of evidence, since these birdies' shells were thick, preserving precious DNA inside. Plus, there are tons of these eggshell fragments sprinkled all over Madagascar's beaches. Because of these findings, we now know these birds were herbivores and loved eating leaves and seeds. We also know the tiny kiwi bird is its closest living relative. Now, dodos were these amazing birds we also used to share the planet with. They're like distant cousins to ancient pigeons. To give you some perspective, imagine a chunky bird weighing about 50 pounds. Similar to chickens, turkeys, and ostriches, dodos were also the types of birds that couldn't fly. Their wings were small, and they had the muscle strength of, well, a wet noodle. Now, you might have heard the word dodo used as a name for creatures that aren't that bright. Don't get confused, though, by this name. These birds were in fact intelligent. Scientists were able to figure that out by studying their fossils. It turns out that they were good at smelling stuff, unlike most birds that are all about the visuals. These creatures aren't around for us to study anymore, but that might change. One evolutionary biologist is on a mission to fully understand these amazing ancient birds. On that note, she revealed that the dodo's DNA has been completely sequenced. There are even talks about potentially bringing dodos back to life. They would make a nice addition to the lovely beaches of Mauritius, the place they used to call home many, many years ago. As with many other crazy internet discoveries, it all kickstarted on Reddit with a wild post about wicked forest designs. Just take a gander on Google Earth and hit up the history tool to watch epic transformations from barren valleys to densely populated areas teeming with lush green tree plantations. Currently, Uruguay has approximately 2.7 million acres of artificial forests. Just to put that into perspective, it would take you around 15 to 20 minutes to walk across 1 acre, depending on how fast your pace is. You could spend a lifetime just walking around those artificial Uruguayan forests. But how did they emerge, and how did they reach this scale? So there's this process called afforestation, where trees are planted in previously non-forested areas. This initiative was implemented as part of a larger plan to increase the country's forest cover, resulting in Uruguay now exporting an impressive $2 billion worth of wood pulp annually. Despite native forests only covering 5% of the country, these artificial forests occupy a significant 6%. Another cool thing about these forests is that they have special trees that originally couldn't be found in Uruguay. It was decided to plant eucalyptus trees there, as they show impressive results in terms of how fast they grow. A tree can get through a whole cycle, from a little plant to one ready to be harvested, in as little as 10 years. Yeah, not as impressive as bamboo, that grows a couple of feet a day, but still faster than a common Uruguay tree called the Tree of Heaven, which takes about 25 years to get full size. By the way, it's considered pretty fast too. Now this funky forest in Japan is literally turning heads. In the Miyazaki Prefecture, there's a group of Japanese cedar trees that are causing a buzz with their unique concentric circles reaching toward the sky. A recent aerial photo captured these crop circles, and now everyone is scratching their heads trying to figure out how they came to be. But fear not, there's no extraterrestrial invasion involved. It turns out this cool formation was actually a carefully planned project from almost half a century ago. Back in 1973, researchers planted these trees in specific radial increments to create these mesmerizing circles. 50 years ago, Google Earth was nowhere around. But looking at that forest, you might think that the Japanese have been preparing to boast their forest on the internet for half a century. Now, what's even more fascinating is how the trees grew in a curved shape, spreading out in an unexpected way. Originally meant to be harvested after 5 years, there's now talk of preserving this circular forest because of all the newfound interest. Now, look at this portal in the forest. There's no way it could have emerged naturally, right? If your first guess was that it was a piece of contemporary art, you were right. So, this portal is located in southern Estonia, and it was created by Finnish artist, this guy. This portal is far from being his only creation. He's had other crazy projects too. Like, he once sailed to Estonia in a boat made of bark. He also chopped down a forest plot, sorted all the materials for months, and then made an installation the same size as the original plot. There was even a time when he cut a line in ice with a chainsaw and ended up in a freezing swamp. This guy definitely knows how to surprise people. Most of his works are nature-related, so you probably shouldn't be surprised that this forest portal is yet another creation of his. What do you think the artist wanted to convey through this portal? Let us know in the comments. Trees are something that are definitionally straight, right? Well, not as long as you're in the crooked forest in Poland. Near the ground, the trees there bend sharply to the north, then magically straighten back up after a little detour of 3 to 9 feet. It's like they're doing the limbo, but with trees. The mystery of how these trees ended up swerving like they're on a roller coaster is still unsolved. Some think humans might have intervened to create some funky furniture or boat-building material, while others blame it on a wild snowstorm. Nobody knows for sure. Regardless of how they got this way, the Crooked Forest is a hot spot for tourists and nature lovers. If you ever come to Poland, make sure to visit this nature's wonder. Welcome to the Goblin Forest, a magical section of East Egmont that will make you feel like you've stepped into a fairy tale. This enchanting forest, also known as the Kamahiwa, is famous for the abundance of gnarly kamahi trees that give the whole place an eerie yet stunning vibe. As you hike through the Goblin Forest, you'll be surprised by lush greenery, moss-covered trees, and falling rays of sun that create a truly enchanting atmosphere. It's a photographer's dream come true. Now, while you might not find real goblins or mythical creatures in the forest, yeah, I know, it's a bummer, you will still encounter a variety of native bird species. Birdwatchers will be in heaven spotting all the feathered friends flitting about, and all that alliteration. Plus, if you're lucky, you might even catch a glimpse of glowworms lighting up the trails. With a network of well-maintained hiking trails suitable for all fitness levels, the Goblin Forest is the perfect destination for adventurers looking for a magical experience in nature. So, grab your hiking boots and get ready to explore this enchanted forest of wonders. Monteverde Cloud Forest in Costa Rica is not your typical forest adventure. Think of high-flying suspension bridges and trails above the treetops. On foggy days, you can wander through misty clouds for a mystical vibe. This nature reserve is called a cloud forest, and it's a real scientific definition. Cloud forests differ from your average ones in several aspects. First, they're usually evergreen forests that are like tropical oases, with a constant veil of low-level clouds covering the canopy. The next thing that's different is moss. It's so abundant there that these places are sometimes even nicknamed mossy forests. Going back to Monteverde Cloud Forest, however, it's more impressive if you visit it on a foggy day. But even on clear days, the views of the lush greenery are absolutely stunning. Now, if a regular forest sounds a bit boring to you, our planet has something more fun to offer. How about an underwater forest? Whether you're a local Oregonian or just passing through, Clear Lake is definitely a dive spot you've got to check out. True to its name, Clear Lake lives up to its reputation, with crystal-clear waters boasting up to 100 feet of visibility. It's like swimming in a massive pool. But brace yourself, because it's a chilly 38 degrees Fahrenheit all year round. Nah, I wouldn't venture in there. It's more adapted for penguins, I guess. Well, never mind. This lake is special because of its history. It was formed over 3,000 years ago by volcanic activity that redirected a river, preserving ancient trees that you can still see standing tall underwater today. There's this section known as underwater forest, where you can see ancient trees deep down. An underwater forest walk sounds fancy, doesn't it? And in Madagascar, there's not a forest, but an avenue of trees. But the trees are so majestic, this avenue can rival with the coolest actual forest. I'm talking about these awesome, gigantic baobab trees. Picture this, an 850-foot stretch of road lined with 20 to 25 massive baobabs, towering at about 100 feet tall. In terms of height, it's as if this alley was packed with many Rio's Christ the Redeemer statues. Even a 6-foot guy would feel insecure there. And if you venture just 4 miles away, you'll find the baobab amaru, 2 baobabs that grew twisted together like a love story. Legend has it that they represent an impossible love between 2 young villagers who dreamt of a life together. Now they stand there, intertwined for eternity.
Today, I'm going to tell you about creatures that had unique features which allowed them to grow to incredible sizes. They were some of the most impressive animals to have ever existed on our planet. The Argentinosaurus is a genus of sauropod dinosaurs that lived approximately 97 million years ago in what is now South America. Scientists think it was one of the largest land animals ever, with a length of up to 100 feet and a weight of up to 100 tons. A farmer stumbled upon a giant leg bone while tending his cattle. That's how he discovered the first fossils of the Argentinosaurus in Argentina in 1987. Further excavations uncovered more bones, revealing a massive dinosaur that would have dwarfed most other animals of its time. The Spinosaurus, meaning spine lizard, is a genus of theropod dinosaur that lived around 97 million years ago in what is now North Africa. It is believed to be one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs to ever exist, with a length of up to 60 feet and a weight of up to 23 tons. The Spinosaurus is known for its distinctive elongated sail-like structure on its back. It was likely used for thermoregulation. It also had long crocodile-like jaws that were lined with sharp teeth. This allowed the creature to catch and eat large prey, such as fish, crocodiles, and other dinosaurs. The first fossils of the Spinosaurus were discovered in Egypt in 1912. The sperm whale, Physeter macrocephalus, is a species of toothed whale that is the largest toothed predator on Earth. It also has the largest brain of any animal species. It is found in oceans all over the world and can dive to depths of up to 7,000 feet in search of food. You can easily recognize sperm whales by their massive, block-shaped heads, which can measure up to 1/3 of their total body length. They have dark brown or grayish-blue skin and a distinctive wrinkled appearance. The Titanoboa is an extinct genus of a giant snake that lived approximately 58 million years ago. It is considered to be the largest known snake ever. It could grow up to 42 feet and weighed around 2,500 pounds. The first fossils of the Titanoboa were discovered in a coal mine in Colombia in 2004. This discovery meant a lot because it provided insights into the size and behavior of snakes during the Paleocene era, as well as the overall climate and ecosystem of the time. The blue whale, Balanoptera musculus, is the largest animal on Earth, measuring up to 100 feet in length and weighing as much as 200 tons. These marine mammals are found in oceans all over the world and can live up to 90 years. Blue whales have a long, streamlined body that is usually blue-gray in color with mottled patterns. They have a small dorsal fin and 2 pectoral fins that are about 1/3 the length of their body. Blue whales feed on tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill, and they eat a lot. A single adult blue whale can eat up to 8,000 pounds of krill in a day. The Leadsichthus is an extinct genus of large, bony fish that lived during the Jurassic period, approximately 155 million years ago. It is believed to be one of the largest fish that have ever lived. Some estimates suggest that it could grow up to 55 feet in length. The first fossils of Leadsichthus were discovered in England in the 19th century, and more recent discoveries have been made in other parts of Europe, South America, and Africa. Despite its enormous size, the Leadsichthus was a filter feeder, similar to modern-day whale sharks, and likely fed on plankton and other small organisms. The creature did it by simply swimming with its enormous mouth open, filtering water through its gills. The pterodostro is an extinct species of flamingo-like birds that lived approximately 35 million years ago. They were relatively small birds with a wingspan of about 2-3 feet. And they were known for their distinctive long, narrow beaks equipped with comb-like structures used for filter feeding. The pterodostro lived in shallow bodies of water, like lakes and lagoons, and mostly fed on small crustaceans and other tiny organisms. The animal filtered them from the water using the comb-like structures on the inside of its beak while swimming through the water. The African elephant is the largest land animal on Earth and one of the most recognizable ones. There are 2 species of the African elephant, the savanna elephant, Loxodonta africana, and the forest elephant, Loxodonta cyclotis. You can see them in various parts of sub-Saharan Africa. These creatures can be identified by their large size, gray skin, and long trunks. African elephants can grow up to 13 feet tall and weigh up to 14,000 pounds, depending on the species and gender.
So, does the mysterious Devil's Gardens in the Amazon rainforest ring any bells? Don't worry, it's not some spooky phenomenon. It's the work of some tiny but mighty insects called the lemon ants. These ants inject a natural herbicide, formic acid, into any other plant that is not the tree species that they call home. By doing this, they create a space for their treehouse saplings to grow, allowing the ant colony to expand as it occupies new nesting sites in the saplings. That's some efficient gardening, if you ask me. But don't be fooled. These devil gardens are not just a bunch of boring old trees. In fact, they are botanical anomalies that grow very slowly every year, and some of them are over 800 years old. Who knew ants could create such impressive and long-lasting structures? Of course, the rainforest is still one of the most diverse ecosystems on Earth, with a remarkable diversity of plant life. But it's fascinating to see the control ants can have over their environment, creating single-species structures in such a complex ecosystem. But where does the name Devil's Garden come from? We know ants are to blame, but is there something else hiding in the Amazon rainforest? Well, picture this. You're strolling along, taking in the lush foliage, when suddenly you stumble upon a clearing. But wait, there's something strange about this patch of land. There's no vegetation, just a handful of trees standing alone in the dirt. What's going on here? It's easy to understand why people came up with this name after seeing the weird stretch of vegetation. And as humans do, they came up with quite an impressive legend to back up the story. It was said that the inhabitant of this eerie oasis was a shape-shifting evil spirit, like me. Just kidding. This little guy may have looked like a misshapen person walking on one hoof and one human foot. But don't be fooled. He supposedly had a whole bag of tricks up his sleeve, including the ability to transform into someone you know and lead you down the path to doom. Hey, it's just a myth, but you have to admit it was quite convincing, right? Clever landscaping ants aside, there are a lot of unsolved mysteries hidden in the Amazon rainforest, like its unusual geoglyphs, for example. Humans have been getting creative with the Earth's surface for ages. Geoglyphs are just one of the many ways we've left our mark on this planet. Basically, we take some sand or stones, move them around a bit, and voila! We've got ourselves a funky design that pops against the backdrop of the ground. A new study found that the area was home to up to 1 million people before Columbus first arrived in the New World back in 1492. That's a lot of people, and they left behind some pretty cool stuff. The Amazon rainforest is already amazing, with 1 in 10 known species in the world living there, and 1 in 5 of Earth's birds. But did you know that over the past few decades, archaeologists have discovered evidence of numerous large complex societies that may have inhabited Amazonia? It turns out that the Amazon rainforest was not just a pristine wilderness, but a hub of human activity as well. These South American geoglyphs are particularly interesting. They're these huge structures that combine square, circular, and hexagonal shapes. Archaeologists have found very few remains of habitation inside the enclosures, which suggests they were not settlements. Instead, the most likely explanation is that they were used for ceremonial gatherings. The exact function of these structures is still a mystery, though. To find out how widespread human settlements were in the Amazon, scientists focus on the basin of the upper reaches of the Tapias River, a major tributary of the Amazon. Using satellite images, they discovered 81 new archaeological sites in the upper Tapias Basin, with a total of 104 earthworks. That means there is no gap in the network of earthworks spanning across Amazonia's southern rim. When researchers conducted ground surveys of 24 of these sites, they found evidence that the sites they visited were once inhabited. These sites dated from 1250 to 1500 CE and range from about 100 to 1300 feet wide. The largest were typically hexagonal fortified settlements, suggesting a certain degree of planning and uniformity in their construction. Based on the size and distributions of the earthworks, the researchers suggested that similar settlements may have extended over about 154,000 square miles of the southern rim of the Amazon, supporting a population of between 500,000 and 1 million people in late pre-Columbian times. Of course, the new study doesn't mean the Amazon rainforest was ever a teeming megalopolis. It's still mostly uncharted, so we have no idea how pre-Columbian populations were distributed across Amazonia. But it's exciting to learn about these ancient societies and the cool things they left behind. The scientists plan to do more excavations in the upper Tapias Basin to refine their understanding of the cultural developments there. Who knows what they'll find next? Maybe a lost city full of treasure and adventure. Also hidden in the vast habitat of the Amazon is this next quirky creature. Ever heard of the Amazon pink river dolphins? Unfortunately, there is still so much we don't know about them. First things first, though, let's talk about what they look like. So picture this, a small, light-colored dolphin with a pink nose and lips. They're the Barbie of dolphins. Aside from that, they look like regular dolphins with plump bodies, bulbous foreheads, skinny snouts, chubby cheeks, and small eyes. They can be found in countries like Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, and Peru. They're also the only species of river dolphin found in the Amazon River. Unfortunately, these little guys are officially critically endangered species, so there are not many specimens available that scientists can study. No other name is more famous when it comes to exploring the Amazon rainforest than that of Percy Fawcett. He dedicated his life to exploring the area in search of a lost city. And not just any city, but an ancient, mysterious city that he called Z. Sounds like something straight out of an Indiana Jones movie, right? Percy was born in England in 1867 and had quite a career before he started exploring. But he didn't let his profession hold him back from following his dreams of exploring South America. In fact, he made 7 expeditions to the Amazon between 1906 and 1924, each time getting closer to uncovering the secrets of Z. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how large the Amazon rainforest is. How big is it? I asked myself. It's so big that you could fit the whole of the UK and Ireland into it a whopping 17 times. That's a lot of trees and animals to navigate through. But Percy was up for the challenge. Despite his best efforts, Percy never found the lost city of Z, and sadly, he disappeared during his final expedition in 1925. But his legacy lived on through the years, inspiring many to become archaeologists and explorers themselves. In fact, a book called The Lost City of Z was written about Percy's adventures and was even made into a movie. It's not all hidden mysteries and wild nature out there. There are around 1 million indigenous folks living their best lives in the Amazon rainforest. That's right, they hunt, fish, farm, and even have access to Western medicine and education. But here's the kicker. Not all of these folks are keen on socializing with outsiders, and can you blame them? For years, loggers, miners, and ranchers have been, shall we say, behaving badly toward these communities. It's no wonder that some tribes have chosen to stay isolated and protect themselves from the dangers of the outside world. In fact, in 2018, Brazilian authorities were able to snap a photo of a man dubbed the Indigenous Man in the Hole. He's the last remaining member of his tribe. But don't feel too bad for him. He's doing just fine on his own and has made it pretty clear that he's not interested in outside visitors. The authorities still leave him some seeds and tools though, so it's not all bad news.
There are insects in nature that love to make a lot of noise. Imagine you're at a rock concert where a singer loudly yells into a microphone and the guitarists give out deafening chords, and all this is transmitted through giant speakers. It feels like the music passes through your body. You will experience a similar sensation if you find yourself near a swarm of cicadas. These creatures create a clicking, ringing sound with the help of vibrating membranes on their stomachs. The awakening of cicadas is always a surprise for people. Any day you can wake up to a loud noise outside. Cicadas gather in huge swarms, fly out into the streets, and cover cars, trees, and buildings. They chatter for weeks, and then silence comes. Cicadas disappear as suddenly as they appear. The cicada's sounds can be pleasant or harmful to your ears depending on the species. It can be something melodic and captivating. When millions of cicadas click in the forest, it resembles the sound of a jet plane or a circular saw working. Some people can't stand it and run away from the singing swarm, but many also say that cicadas make a pleasant sound that envelops you from all sides, which is a pretty unusual feeling. They make this noise to attract breeding partners or to warn their families of danger. Perhaps they are just having fun. And the reason for such joy is their life cycle. Cicadas spend several years underground and then come out to make noise for the last several weeks of their lives. And what they do under the surface is one of the most exciting mysteries for scientists. So, cicadas are physically strong insects with big eyes and unique wings. We'll talk about their uniqueness later, but now let's figure out why these insects are so awesome. There are about 3,000 species of cicadas, but they are all divided into two groups, annual and periodic ones. Annual is a common type. You can meet them all over the world. They live from 2 to 5 years or longer and have a normal insect lifestyle. They fly, drink the sap of trees, and click. But periodic cicadas live only in North America, in the central and eastern regions of the USA. They can disappear as a species off the face of the earth and then, a few years later, appear in a forest and make such noise that you can hear it from afar. Imagine walking in the woods, picking mushrooms and berries, and then the soil begins to move and hundreds of thousands of cicadas are flying out. They are everywhere, and they are very loud. But don't worry, they're not aggressive and won't bite you. The life cycle of these insects is divided into 3 parts: eggs, nymphs, and adults. At first, females lay several hundred eggs in different places. They leave their offspring near the ground on the branches of trees and brush. Then, after 6 to 10 weeks, little nymphs hatch out of them, fall to the floor, and burrow into the soil. There, they munch on fluids from the roots of plants and grow. They spend 13 or 17 years in these underground tunnels, then molt their shells and come out. And they all do it at the same time. It's as if someone gives them one order, and they drop everything to come to the surface simultaneously. And after they rise, they start to click. Imagine spending more than 10 years in a cramped, dark space, and then going out into a bright, open world where you will live for several weeks. No wonder cicadas are chirping so loudly. Or they may have a great time underground and then decide to spend their retirement outdoors. Most likely, their appearance coincides with convenient natural conditions. They wait for the soil temperature to become comfortable for reproduction and come out. However, while the soil heats up and gets colder annually, cicadas come out once every 13 or 17 years. Scientists can't give an exact explanation for this, but it may be related to other animals. Cicadas are pretty defenseless and nutritious creatures. A swarm of millions of cicadas is a feast for many forest inhabitants. Owls and foxes like to eat them. Suppose the forest ecosystem gets used to the annual singing of cicadas. In that case, their enemies will quickly destroy the entire population of these insects. Therefore, cicadas come out when no one expects them. Perhaps they choose the moment when the population growth of owls and foxes is at the lowest level. To avoid meeting them, cicadas wait for several years. This version looks logical, but something doesn't work in it. If cicadas fight for survival in such a way, then why don't all species do it? Annual cicadas regularly appear in the forest and are an integral part of the ecosystem. They continue to exist despite the presence of many enemies. Why do periodic ones decide to hide? This is still unknown. A massive swarm of cicadas resembles locusts. So many consider them pests. But unlike these crop eaters, cicadas only feed on the sap of trees. They won't eat your corn, destroy your garden, and bite the leaves. Cicadas drink juice from branches and roots, and they do it quite rarely. Yes, 1 million cicadas can damage trees because of their relative weight, but the damage they cause to people is not comparable to what locusts do. Besides, cicadas will rarely bother you. You can finish university and change several jobs, and the cicadas would come out only once during this time, and they also look pretty cute for insects. Their wings have beautiful patterns, and their eyes are so huge. However, they can still terrify you, especially if you meet a swarm of cicadas on your way. Life underground seems safe, but even there, the cicadas have their antagonists. And the main one is a special kind of parasitic fungi that can penetrate the body of a cicada and slowly devour it. The fungus takes control of the body and turns the host into a living zombie. These parasites have also learned to change their life cycle, following the life cycle of cicadas. That is, the fungus remains in the body of an insect for a long time and does nothing. And then, when the cicada comes to the surface, the parasite wakes up and begins to spoil its life. It feeds on the host body and forces it to spread the fungus spores throughout the swarm to infect future generations. Another type of fungus doesn't wait for the cicadas to crawl to the surface. These parasites can cause infected insects to get out of the ground ahead of time, crawl up tree branches and scatter spores. Sometimes fungi grow out of cicadas while they are still underground. It seems that cicadas won't survive with such dangerous enemies, but nature has found a balance. Some types of fungi don't destroy their carriers. They live in symbiosis with cicadas. The parasite gets a home, and the cicada probably gets nutrients from the fungus. For scientists, this is a unique case when fungi abandon their parasitic lifestyle. With each emergence to the surface, the cicadas become bigger in size. This happens because large cities emit a lot of heat and nutrients into the air, warming the area by several degrees. This contributes to an increase in cicadas' size. But the growth only applies to those insects that live near cities. Cicadas hiding in rural areas with colder temperatures retain the same size. The uniqueness of cicadas is not only in their life development, but also in their anatomy. When insects become adults, their wings get covered with tiny nanopillars that can repel water, destroy bacteria, and self-clean. Doctors, chemists, and engineers want to use the properties of cicada wings to develop new technologies in different fields. A coating with the cicada's nanopillars can help people create new medicines. Engineers want to use self-cleaning surfaces of the wings without glare as coatings for solar panels and other high-tech developments. So, yeah, cicadas actually help us a lot.
Now, you can't find living dinosaurs nowadays, which is a good thing, mostly, but you can still meet some creatures that might have gone to lunch with them. The frilled shark, for example, is a living fossil that comes from a family of sharks that have been around for about 80 million years. One of the coolest things about it is its long, eel-like body that can grow as long as 6 feet. It has 6 pairs of gills on its throat, which help the frilled shark breathe in the deep, cold ocean where there isn't much oxygen. The shark can move very quickly, like a snake, to catch its prey when it least expects it. Little frilled sharks take an exceptionally long time to grow, up to 3.5 years, which is one of the longest times for any animal with a backbone. The Chinese giant salamander is another living fossil that can tell you what was going on Earth around 170 million years ago. Now, when I say tell, I really mean it, as it can make sounds like hisses, whistles, and barks, and even a noise that sounds like a crying kid. The biggest Chinese salamander found so far weighed 130 pounds, as heavy as 2 Dalmatians, and was almost 6 feet long. Giant salamanders like to be alone. Hey, I want to be alone. And will chase away other salamanders from their space, except when it's time to start a family. During the day, they hide and sleep under rocks. They can make a special substance from their skin that keeps predators away. Now, gharials are reptiles that have been around for about 38 million years. They live in India and Nepal in slow-moving, muddy rivers. Sadly, there are very few gharials left in the wild, less than 100. These creatures can't control their body temperature, so they need to sunbathe to get warm or cool down in the water if they get too hot. Their eyes are close together and face forward, which helps them see in 3 dimensions and judge distances more accurately. Gharials also have a transparent third eyelid that protects their eyes when they're underwater. They have over 100 sharp teeth, but they can't chew their food. Instead, they use their strong jaws to grab prey and then, swallow it whole. The alligator gar is a fish that has a family history of more than 100 million years. It still has some cool features from ancient times, like being able to breathe both air and water. It also has a special spiral-shaped intestine like a shark. The alligator gar is one of the biggest and heaviest fish in North America. Just like an alligator, it has a long body and snout, plus a row of sharp teeth. But instead of legs, the gar has fins to help it swim underwater. The tuatara isn't a lizard as you might think, and isn't a dinosaur either. This New Zealand resident is one of the most unique animals in the world. Scientists love studying tuataras because they can help us understand how today's lizards and snakes evolved. One of the coolest things about the tuatara is its third eye, called a parietal eye, on its head. It has its own lens, retina, and a nerve that connects it to the brain. Scientists think it might help the tuatara know when it's light or dark outside and absorb sunlight to make vitamin D or help them keep their body temperature exactly right. Tuataras can live an extraordinarily long time, up to 100 years. Cassowaries are the youngsters on our list, as they've been around for only 60 million years. They have some things in common with dinosaurs, like their three-toed feet and how they breathe. Cassowaries love to eat fruit, lots and lots of fruit. This love of fruit helps the rainforest because when cassowaries eat the fruit, their bodies don't harm the seeds inside. As they move around the forest, they spread these seeds, you can guess how, with their own natural fertilizer, helping new plants grow. Cassowaries are big birds, about 6 feet tall and weigh over 100 pounds. They have a special claw on each foot that is 5 inches long, and they can use it to kick real fast. If they feel threatened, they can charge, kick, and even jump on someone. They can also leap up to 5 feet in the air. So, the best thing to do is stay far, far away from where they live. The order Notostraca is a group of crustaceans that you may know as tadpole shrimp or shield shrimps. These animals have been around for about 360 million years. They have a wide, flat shell that covers their head, and they have a pair of eyes on top. These creatures can be found all over the world in different kinds of water, like freshwater, brackish water, and even salty pools. They can also look different depending on where they live. Notostracans aren't picky eaters and can snack on pretty much anything, from plants to small animals and other shrimps. Some of them are considered pests in places like California rice paddies because they stir up the mud, which blocks sunlight from reaching the young rice plants. Sturgeons are some of the largest fish species on the planet. They live only in the cool waters of the northern hemisphere and never travel below the equator. Even though they are huge, sturgeons don't have teeth. They eat by sucking food off the bottom of rivers, gulfs, lakes, and oceans. Scientists believe that sturgeons came from a group of fish that first appeared around 419 million years ago, long before dinosaurs even existed. Their ancestors survived a big extinction event that wiped out 90% of all species and went on to become the largest fish in many rivers in North America and Eurasia. Sturgeons can live up to 100 years old or even older. Female sturgeons can lay up to 3 million eggs at a time, but not all of the eggs eventually turn into real fish. Our next hero, the Pacific lamprey, has successfully lived through at least 4 mass extinctions. Its ancient ancestors evolved over 450 million years ago. These creatures have cartilage instead of bones and a third eye, which is a special light-sensing organ on top of their heads. Instead of a regular jaw, they have a mouth surrounded by teeth. They latch onto prey and sup up body fluids like real underwater vampires. And although he wasn't living underwater, the story goes that King Henry I of England might have lost his life because of a lamprey. The English monarch loved this fish so much that he defied doctors' orders to stop eating its flesh. He got sick every time he'd have it, but the lack of bones and the unusual taste made the royal fall in love with it. As a result, he got some scary symptoms from eating lamprey and eventually passed away. Can you say clueless? The elephant fish, also called the Australian ghost shark, has been on Earth for around 400 million years. Even though they're related to sharks, they aren't actually sharks. Instead of bones, their bodies are made entirely of cartilage. These fish have a special shiny tissue in their eyes that can make their eyes look like they change color from yellow to green. Elephant fish can be pretty tough and will fight back if they feel threatened. They like to be alone and usually don't hang out with other fish. Horseshoe crabs also deserve the title of survival champs, as they've been around even before dinosaurs, since 450 million years ago. 4 species are still roaming the ocean from Maine all the way to Mexico. Horseshoe crabs are more like spiders than ticks than they are like real crabs. They have 9 eyes, plus extra light sensors near their tails so they can see really well. They breathe underwater using flap-like gills near their belly, and sometimes they use these gills to swim upside down. Every spring, when the tide is high, these creatures come up to the beach at night to mate and lay their eggs, and you can see hundreds of thousands of them.
You're strapped in a boat cruising down the Amazon River with the sun scorching hot. As you check out your map, your boat starts rocking back and forth. The water is starting to get more intense, so you hang on for dear life. You tuck your map in your pocket and try to take control of your boat. You strike some jagged rocks and duck low to avoid tree branches. Your boat strikes a large rock out of nowhere and capsizes. You're swimming in the murky green water. While you're trying your best to get ashore, your boat gets washed away. Underneath the water lies a whole new world of bizarre and dangerous animals. Candiru fish are snake-like creatures that can grow up to 16 inches long. Arapimus can weigh more than an adult male and are taller than most basketball players. They are the biggest freshwater fish in South America. They have a hybrid gill system that forces them to pop up to the surface every 5 to 15 minutes to breathe in oxygen for their large swim bladder. You swim out of the raging water and dry yourself off. Oh no, your map is completely soaked. There's no way you can get to your destination without it. You venture into the thick rainforest, shoving the branches and leaves away. As you get deeper, you notice something on a tree. It's barely moving, but it's got sharp claws and a raggedy coat. It stretches its arm to another branch and tries to pull itself up, ever so slowly. Sloths sleep more than half their days and only head down from trees once a week. They're so motionless, they sometimes grow algae and moss on their fur. The rainforest gets denser with each step until there's barely any sunlight illuminating the path in front of you. You notice a figure following you. With every branch you step on, you can hear a faint sound right next to you creeping around. You start walking a bit faster, and the sound catches up with you. You make it out of the dense part and tread along a narrow path until you reach a cliff. You can't walk normally here, so you pin against the wall and walk sideways to cross the hills. You slowly move across with the river 30 feet below you. You move your right foot, and some rocks fall into the river. You keep going and misstep. You're about to fall, but you hold on to a large tree branch and pull yourself up. You notice a couple of colorful poison frogs inches away from your fingers. Touching any of these frogs can be extremely dangerous and harmful, despite their amazing color patterns. The golden poison frog is one of the most poisonous animals in the world. One of them hops right next to you, so you let go of the branch and fall back in the river. The river is washing you down until you reach a calm current. Underneath you is a swarm of piranhas swimming with their sharp teeth. The red color on their skin is unmistakable, so you swim off like an Olympic athlete. Piranhas will eat anything that gets in their way, no matter the size. You grip onto a log and climb up a small rock to catch your breath. There's a huge electric eel underneath the rock. Despite their name, they're more related to catfish than eels. They use their powerful 600 volts of electricity to defend themselves and catch food. You're stuck, unless you're like the common basilisk that can run on the water like a jet ski. These incredible lizards have special webbing on their toes and can run the distance of a basketball court. You hop on a bunch of rocks until you reach the land. You continue walking along the riverbank until you come across a moving rock. You rub your eyes and see it moving again. It's a dinosaur-looking turtle that resembles a crocodile with armor. The mata mata is a freshwater turtle that disguises itself with its surroundings to catch prey. Their heads stretch longer than their bodies. You shimmy your way past it and continue. You head back into the rainforest and find a spot to rest. Wait, there are giant ants everywhere. They're the biggest ants in the world and can produce one of the most painful stings out there, even comparable to a wasp's sting. You immediately get up and find another place to rest. As you continue walking along, you notice the same feeling of something following you. You can hear some leaves rustling, but it's getting dark and there's no way of telling. You find a nice little spot to build a campfire and catch some Z's. But in the Amazon, everything is a threat. Except for those cute capybaras wandering around. They live in groups next to water sources. They're also the biggest rodents in the world. You don't need to worry about them if you're stuck in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Suddenly, you feel something slithering up next to you. You look down and see a massive green anaconda just about to constrict you. They are the heaviest snakes in the world and can grow up to 20 feet long and have a huge appetite. You get up and sprint your way out of there. All right, you found a decent cave to crash in. It's daytime again, and you're still alive. You continue walking along the rainforest. You were able to find some breakfast to boost your energy for the rest of the day. You spot something on a tree that looks like a branch, but it's actually a potu, a master of disguise that can spend days motionless on broken tree branches. These bizarre birds use those branches as their permanent home, where they lay their eggs and chill all day. You continue your way through the rainforest and see a Brazilian wandering spider crawling on a tree branch right in front of you. 8 of these species can be found in the Amazon area. They are some of the most aggressive and venomous spiders out there. So, you make a big detour and walk away from it. You feel someone walking next to you again, but you still can't figure out what it is. You see a steep cliff with a waterfall hitting a large lake ahead of you. Looks peaceful, until you see a team of black caimans gathering around the shore. They're the biggest predators in the whole Amazon ecosystem and feed on anything that moves. It's a good thing you're on high ground, otherwise, whoa! You slip and fall down the river, right on the deep end. So far, no caimans spotted you. You swim underwater and try to get to the opposite end of where the reptiles are. As you climb out and dry yourself off, you notice some large black spots on you. You try pulling them off, but they've latched on pretty hard. The Amazon giant leech finds its target by tracking movement and shadow. Once they attach themselves to the skin, it's extremely difficult to extract them. The best way to do so is to slide your finger next to its mouth and pull it off slowly. Ugh. You manage to get them off your body and see that the caimans are swimming towards you. You're pinned to the wall with the lake of hungry reptiles approaching. Suddenly, a pink dolphin jumps out of the water and splashes all over them. They can grow larger than humans and are the celebrities of the Amazon. Scientists think they get their color from the blood capillaries on their skin. The Amazon even has bull sharks swimming around. These carnivorous giant fish are threatening to humans and can swim in both saltwater and freshwater. These sharks prey on anything within their reach, including other sharks. The dolphin distracted the caimans, so you climb up the cliff and try to find the best way to escape. Opened jaws waiting for you to fall into the pit are right below you. You're lucky enough to escape to the top, but as your arms pull you up, the first thing that you see is a jaguar looking straight at you. It's the creature that's been following you this whole time. You get up while it starts circling you, timing its strike. You know that you can't take on a jaguar, nor can you outrun it, so you grab a large tree branch from the ground to defend yourself. It jumps at you, but you duck down in time. The jaguar lands in the water far away from the caiman crocs. It's a good thing these large kitties are excellent swimmers. You pick yourself up and continue. And to your surprise, you find your boat again. You fix it up and sail your way out of the Amazon. Whew!
You decided to go scuba diving for the first time. The water is clear and the sun is shining on the seabed. You take a few selfies and the fish swimming by when suddenly the ocean goes pitch black. You look up and, oh my, what is that gigantic animal? It's definitely not a shark, not a whale. Is it a turtle? Yup, but fear not, it's not gonna hurt you. If you had lived on this same Earth about 72 million years ago, then maybe this could have really happened to you. Scientists have recently found the fossils of a gigantic marine turtle that could have grown as big as 12 feet. If you don't have any idea of how big that is, let's see some examples. That's the average length of a hippopotamus, 6 golden retrievers, or 2 Michael Jordans stacked on top of each other. The turtle's scientific name is an homage to that old-school sea monster called Leviathan. Maybe you remember this from old-school history lessons. The Leviathan is supposedly a mythical creature that would swallow entire ships or people that were deemed too greedy by the creature. Can you imagine being swallowed by this humongous sea turtle? No, thank you. The fossils of this gigantic creature began to be excavated between 2016 and 2021, all the way in northeastern Spain. The first fossil was located by a hiker in the Spanish Pyrenees, and it was around 8 inches long. The pelvis of this turtle alone measured around 35 inches. It would definitely be one of the biggest turtles today if it hadn't gone extinct. FYI, the largest living sea turtles today can reach up to 6 feet in length, which is already pretty big. Now, how about a gigantic prehistoric scorpion? I bet most people here are not huge fans of these creatures, especially since they're poisonous, which is why the thought of a 9-foot-long aquatic scorpion might be the stuff of nightmares. Let's just say that if they hadn't gone extinct some 400 million years ago, lakes and rivers would be much more dangerous places for humans today. These gigantic insects were considered to be apex predators in their time, hunting everything from fish to other animals, even of their own kind. Yikes! I got goosebumps just imagining these creatures. Should we thank the asteroid that hit our planet now or later on in this video? Another prehistoric animal that would shock humans if it were still alive is the so-called Megatherium, a gigantic sloth. This huge sloth is believed to have grown up to 20 feet long, and its weight could be up to 8,000 pounds. It was found in the woodlands and grasslands of South America. The creature used to stand on its 2 feet in order to reach leaves on high branches. These giant sloths had huge claws. They helped them climb trees. I gotta say, I feel uncomfortable imagining these elephant-sized sloths climbing trees. Oh, of course, some dinosaurs will make our super-sized creatures list. But before that, here's a fun fact. Did you know some dinosaurs are still alive today? Scientists have proven that birds are classified as theropod dinosaurs. Such infamous creatures as the T-Rex and Velociraptor belonged to this group. I'm sure you've heard these names even before you watched Jurassic Park. The Velociraptor is that scary dino that breaks into the kitchen. Well, they evolved, gained some feathers, and turned into various species of birds we know today. That means that any bird from chickens to those little blue ones is a direct descendant of dinosaurs. Now, does the name Spinosaurus ring a bell? You can see this huge dinosaur in some museums today. Its fossils, I mean. The Spinosaurus was one of the biggest land predators to walk Earth. Actually, to walk its land and water, since scientists believe that this dino was semi-aquatic. It fed mostly on meat, which means humans would be its natural prey if it lived today. This meat-eating dino lived around 90 to 100 million years ago. It was about 60 feet long, 12 feet high, and weighed up to 22 tons. Its head was around the size of 8 bowling balls and was shaped like a crocodile's face. Basically, the Spinosaurus was a big African elephant with the face of a crocodile. Just kidding. But that would look funny though, wouldn't it? A much more attractive dino was this guy. It's considered to be the largest dinosaur that has ever lived on our planet. What made it so big was its extremely long neck and very long tail. You wouldn't want to stand behind this creature, believe me. If it decided to swish its tail, you'd get catapulted very far away. This creature lived around 100 million years ago, and its fossils were first found in Argentina around 2012. The dino measured 120 feet from head to tail, which made it almost as big as an American football field in width. And have I mentioned it weighed almost as much as a space shuttle? A staggering 75 tons. If it had been a carnivore, it would have probably been the greatest predator. But this big guy was a peaceful herbivore that had such a long neck that it could eat leaves from high trees. Cute, right? We must also talk about the Shastasaurus. As the name suggests, this animal is popularly known as the Mount Shasta lizard. Even though it was a marine reptile and probably never set foot on the mountain itself, this dino was usually around 23 feet long, but there was a specific strand of this species that could get as big as 69 feet long, about the size of the great blue whale. This made it the biggest marine reptile to have ever lived. A fun fact about the Shastasaurus is that scientists believe it didn't even have teeth, which means it could only feed on soft-bodied prey, such as squid, for example. The next animal on our list is the blue whale. Believe it or not, the biggest living animal on Earth actually started small. These days, the average mature blue whale can reach up to 100 feet in length and weigh up to 200 tons. That's more or less the weight of 40 elephants put together, or 30 Tyrannosaurus rexes, or 2,670 average-sized people. Blue whales have to eat up to 50 million calories per day to support that body. That's the equivalent of 30,000 Big Macs, just FYI. But blue whales weren't always this big. They actually evolved from a four-legged mammal that lived on Earth around 48 million years ago. Their ancestor was called Pakicetus, and it was only 6 feet long. Here's a fun fact. To be able to live in the water as one does today, the blue whale had to go through some intense adaptations. A blue whale can replace up to 80 to 90% of oxygen in its lungs each time it takes a breath. A human replaces only up to 15% for comparison. It allows these animals to dive for up to 1 hour at a time, down to a staggering depth of 330 feet. Elephants were bound to make the list. Elephants are currently the largest land animals on Earth. They can grow to be about 13 feet tall and weigh up to 7 tons. That's pretty small if we compare it to the other animals that once lived on Earth, right? But if we placed a 6-foot-tall human next to an elephant, we'll see it's not at all that small. African elephants are bigger than their close relatives, Asian elephants, and they have a similar lifespan to humans, up to 70 years. Pokemon might have made us collectively wish that salamanders were real-life dragons, although they're not. They can still be pretty cool, though. There's a giant species of salamander that is known to be the largest living amphibian. They can grow to be as long as a regular-sized human, reaching up to 6 feet. I bet that wouldn't be a pleasant underwater encounter.
Psst, run! Really? It's not safe out there. There's a saber-toothed tiger lurking around. You better be careful. What are you doing? Don't peek. Okay, just one little peek. How's this possible, you ask? That's because you're in virtual reality, of course. These cool but very dangerous-looking big cats were alive during the last ice age. What if they decided to show up at your doorstep out of nowhere? Knock knock, a saber-toothed tiger is waiting for you to buy its cookies. Meanwhile, the coelacanth, this massive-looking fish, comes from a lineage that's been around for over 300 million years. We thought they didn't exist anymore until 1938, that is, when a live coelacanth was found again. Since then, they've been roaming the waters of the east coast of Africa and the waters of Sulawesi, Indonesia. Man, I wouldn't want to go for a swim and meet one of these fellas face to face. Their jaw has an intercranial joint, which means their mouth opens up by a lot. This is so they can eat large prey, like me. Not good. They're huge, too. Imagine a fish that's as long as you're tall and weighing as much as an average human. The takahe, a flightless bird, was thought to be gone in the year 1898. They're very cute, small and multicolored, usually not taller than your knee. But picture this. You're out for a hike in the Murchison Mountains. Looking around, you spot the bird you thought was extinct. But there they are, as happy as ever, surviving and chilling. Whole colonies of takahes was indeed found just 50 years after they were pronounced extinct. Good job, tiny little birds. A singing dog. Ever heard of those? Riley does sing sometimes when he's bored or hungry, but these are real performers. New Guinea singing dogs. They've been only recently discovered again in the wild for the first time in 50 years. Still, they were never completely extinct to begin with. New Guineans made sure they were safe next to them. But in the wild, very rare and hard to catch a sight of. Look, there goes one. The New Guinea singing dogs are called so because of their famous high-pitched singing. They sometimes sing together too, a dog choir of sorts where they all howl together. I bet they sing better than I do in the shower. Not going far from this area, we have bats, but these ones are sort of different. You see, their ears are enormous. I guess that's why they're called the New Guinea big-eared bats. Clever. The species was found again when one of them was accidentally caught in a bat trap. Until then, I guess they were playing hide-and-seek with us, because up till 1890, they had been thought to be gone. They're still not out of the danger zone because of habitat loss. Imagine you discover a fossil of a species you thought had been extinct for a long time, yet 2 years later, a whole living group of said species is found. Well, this is exactly what happened in 1977 with the Majorcan midwife toad. It's sort of brownish in color with darker brown that makes up its skin spots. Other than that, it's just a small toad with googly eyes. The group of live toads was found close to where the fossil was, on the island of Majorca. There aren't many of them left, about 500 in fact, and as of right now, they're declared vulnerable by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Now, are you a fan of tortoises? You will be when you take a look at this huge beauty. It's called the Ferdinanda Island Galapagos tortoise. It hasn't been seen since 1906. But on February 17, 2019, we were finally able to look at one of these beautiful creatures. It's probably out there with a few of its mates right now, but they also don't allow themselves to be seen. We only know they exist because there's a few tracks and scents. With yet another frog, we have the horned marsupial frog. They're out and about in Ecuador, in the Chocó forest to be more specific. They're called this way because of their distinctive horns directly on top of their eyes. You know the pouch kangaroos use to carry their offspring? Well, the female horned marsupial frog also has that, except it's on the back, so it acts as sort of a backpack. They develop their embryos there, and when they're ready to come out, they hatch as complete infants, unlike regular frogs where they start out as tadpoles. One more toad, the starry night toad or harlequin toad. They're black and covered with loads of white spots all over them. Lost for 30 years, it was discovered back in 2019. Picture them as big bodyguards, water bodyguards to be exact. Oh, that's a very big toad on your screen. Well, for the Arhuaco people, that's exactly what they are, guardians of water. They also have their own name for them, Guna. Sounds like a cheese. When scientists found them yet again, they came across 30 of these little creatures, but initially, they were expecting only one. Well, what a nice surprise. Here's a tiger for you, although it doesn't quite look like your typical tiger. It's called the Tasmanian tiger, and it seemingly disappeared since 1936. But then, out of nowhere, people started seeing them out there in the wild just 5 years ago in 2016. They sort of resemble dogs more than tigers, or a fox maybe. Just take a look at its muzzle. Maybe even a mix of both. Then, a few others started popping up too. And if you happen to think you're seeing one right in front of you, but you're not quite sure, check if they've got stripes on their back. They're definitely out there, but still technically marked as extinct by the IUCN. Okay, picture a horse that looks straight out of a movie scene. Tiny, gorgeous fur, very well behaved. It's tiny, but it's not a pony. It's a Caspian horse. They have an interesting backstory to them. They were discovered by Louise Leyland, who got married to an aristocrat in 1957. Having moved to Tehran, Iran, she didn't quite like how the horses behaved there, so she took matters into her own hands. She took a few people with her, and off they went to the Caspian Sea mountain. And in there, they found 3 of these beautiful tiny little horses. Well, that's how the story goes. Coming up next, a possum that was found in an unexpected place. Guess where? You have 3 options to pick from: hiding in a ski resort, in the Australian outback, or in someone's apartment in the bathroom. Which one do you choose? You have 3 seconds. The right answer is a ski resort. Yes, this possum is called the mountain pygmy possum, and it's originating from Australia. So far, there are 3 different living populations of this tiny possum, but it was believed to be extinct until just 1966. There are fewer than 100 of them, so the IUCN has marked them as critically endangered. Also from Australia is the night parrot, an absolute delight to birdwatchers. Very beautiful, yet mysterious. These little fellas live in very remote areas. You can probably count on the fingers of your hand how many times these birds have been seen since they were found again in 1979. That's how rare they are. Have you ever seen a pygmy tarsier? Neither have I. It was only in 2008 that 3 of them were caught. Scientists don't really want to lose track of their movements again, so what they did was gift them with tiny little collars. This way they can live their life as happy as ever and will know they're safe. The last one I want to tell you about is the tree lobster, but as the name might mistakenly tell you, they're not really lobsters. They're just big black bugs with huge legs. Their extinction story is a sad one. In 1920, a cargo ship got stuck on Lord Howe Island, and it had rats aboard. These rats fled the ship and ran straight to land. Even though tree lobsters are bigger than most insects, they're still relatively small compared to rats. The poor things never stood a chance. Still, in 2004, life shone again for these distinct critters. A pair of Australian scientists were out and about on the island and came across 24 of them. All of them were living beneath one single shrub. Hey, if there's enough space for everyone, it's not small, it's cozy. Bottom line, it's better to be distinct than extinct. Don't you agree?
Let's find out something awesome about poisons. No, this is not another video with the top 10 of the most venomous animals. There will be several of them here, but the point is different. We're going to find out about the nature of these substances, which are dangerous for any living creature. There are 2 glasses in front of you. The first one is full of sour milk, and the other has the venom of one of the most dangerous snakes in the world, Vipera aspis. What do you think? The liquid from which glass can cause negative consequences for your health? The correct answer is sour milk. It can cause bloating, indigestion, and heartburn. But if you drink the snake's venom, nothing will happen. The fact is that this substance is a particular type of protein, and gastric juice splits this protein like any other food. The toxin contained in the poison is dangerous only in contact with blood. Therefore, if you have a wound in your mouth or stomach, then you'll have problems. But as long as the toxin stays away from the blood circulatory system, you needn't worry. However, it doesn't always work like that. Some animals secrete a poison that penetrates your body at the slightest physical contact. But venomous beasts have to deliver this dangerous substance inside your blood. And by the way, this is the difference between poisonous and venomous. In the first case, these are animals that can poison you passively. For example, if you touch them. They don't make any effort, and the poison is released from their bodies constantly. The poison dart frog just hangs out in the jungles of South America and doesn't attack anyone. But everyone is afraid to touch it because its skin secretes one of the most dangerous poisons on Earth. The toxin particles contained in the poison of these animals are so tiny that they easily get through the pores of your skin and cause an intense reaction in your body. But venomous animals have bigger toxin particles that can get inside your body only through injection. Venomous animals bite and sting to deliver the venom to blood. Venomous snakes, wasps, spiders, and other creatures use venom to attack prey. Poisonous frogs or fish covered with poisonous skin use toxins to defend themselves. That's the difference. One of the most venomous creatures in the world is the box jellyfish. When it stings, it injects a powerful toxin into its enemy, affecting the nervous system and skin cells. They are dangerous not only for sea creatures, but also for people. The toxin acts quickly and can lead to serious health problems within minutes. One of the most poisonous creatures in the world besides the poison dart frog is the puffer fish. Yeah, that famous Japanese delicacy. Many have probably heard that if the cook prepares this fish incorrectly, it can be poisonous even after heat treatment. This fish's toxin is 1,000 times more potent than cyanide. The amount of poison inside one puffer fish contains enough toxin to seriously harm several dozen people. When the fish feels danger, it swallows a lot of air along with water and increases in size. In this state, its needles, which contain the toxin, become even more dangerous. So never touch this fish if you see it in the sea. There's the third type of use of venom. It's called intraspecific competition. You can find it in venomous mammals such as the Australian platypus. There are tiny needles on their palms that secrete toxins. A platypus can paralyze an opponent with a kick. But these animals also use poison during mating competitions. Their bodies enhance the properties of the toxins to defeat competitors during the fight for a female. Two males struggle to weaken each other. The male whose poison is more effective wins the battle. Some animals have to bite and sting to use venom, while others just wait for someone else's touch. But what about this little creature that releases its poison like a dart? Meet the cone snail. It hides inside its home and waits for a little fish to swim closer. Then it releases a toxic harpoon from its proboscis and paralyzes the fish. Then the snail swallows the prey whole, like an anaconda. The venom of this small animal is also dangerous for humans as it causes severe problems with breathing, vision, and other issues. At the same time, the substance contained in the poison of the cone snail is used by doctors to make a powerful analgesic. And this is not the only case when animal venom is used in medicine. A poisonous lizard called the Gila monster releases a neurotoxin produced in the salivary gland during a bite. Because of this venom, the bite of this animal is considered one of the most painful in the world. People who were attacked by the Gila monster said that they had experienced a feeling as if hot lava was flowing through their veins. However, such a terrible poison can be useful for humans. Scientists have discovered a hormone in it that can effectively treat diabetes. Some poisons cause muscle paralysis, others can create breathing problems, and others raise blood pressure. But why are they all different? Well, all these differences depend on the prey that venomous animals hunt. For example, most vipers prey on small mammals with a fast metabolism. Therefore, reptiles have developed venom that disrupts blood clotting, resulting in a fast-running hare quickly losing control of its body. However, for cold-blooded animals, such a stratagem would be less effective. That's why some types of cobras produce neurotoxic venom that can stop the transmission inside the nervous system. Such a substance effectively strikes the organisms of cold-blooded creatures. All this suggests that venomous and poisonous creatures adapt their toxins depending on their habitat. That's why venoms of the same species can differ so much. If a viper bit you in one region of a large country, an antidote from another region might not help you. In places with more complex conditions for survival, snakes can develop more dangerous venom to repel enemy attacks or catch fast prey. But this principle also works the other way around. Put a group of snakes in an environment where they can easily catch food and don't have to defend themselves from other animals. This type of snake may eventually become non-venomous. This is because producing venom is a complicated process that requires a lot of energy and resources from the organism. And if the conditions don't require using this substance, then snakes will stop producing it. This happened with sea snakes. They are some of the most venomous animals on Earth that hunt fish at the bottom of the sea. Since their prey was much faster than them, they had to develop a strong venom that would quickly paralyze fish. But one of sea snake species stopped getting food this way. Instead of hunting fish, they began to eat fish eggs. This prey doesn't run away, so snakes don't need venom anymore. Eventually, they stopped producing it. How many animals on the planet do you think are poisonous and venomous? According to scientists' calculations, about 15 to 20%. But most likely, this number is much higher because people haven't fully studied all the biodiversity of such creatures. Interestingly, almost every species of animal has a poisonous or venomous kind. Even among mammals, the platypus is not the only venomous creature. The slow loris seems like a cute, harmless animal. Still, this primate from Southeast Asia secretes venom from its teeth during a bite. Also, some species of shrews produce venom in the same way to paralyze their prey, and vampire bats are the only poisonous flying mammals in the whole world. Okay, we have a large number of poisonous and venomous animals today, but what about the past? Many scientists believe that millions of years ago, venomous dinosaurs walked the Earth. Some studies have confirmed this hypothesis. The venomous glands and tissues of these formidable reptiles haven't survived to our times. But in the teeth of some dinosaurs, scientists found small gaps that modern venomous snakes and lizards have. It's possible that prehistoric monsters also used these holes to secrete venom through them.
What do you think is one of the most dangerous animals in the world? It's not a venomous snake or a formidable tiger, not a ferocious grizzly bear or a giant crocodile. An extremely dangerous creature that can destroy entire species of animals and can cause ecological imbalance around the world is the cane toad. It doesn't look scary and aggressive. It won't attack you or any predatory animal. It spends its time among grass and swamps, hunts insects and croaks. It has many enemies among predators, herons, lizards, and others. And look, the crocodile is swimming up to the toad and grabs it with its powerful jaws. Lunch is ready. But watch what happens next. The crocodile feels very bad. It loses its strength and lies on the grass, not breathing. Call it terminal indigestion. The fact is that the cane toad is a highly poisonous amphibian. It has parotoid glands between the shoulders from which it secretes a dangerous toxin. As soon as it gets into the stomach of any animal, it causes irreversible reactions in the whole organism. Animals that have eaten cane toads rarely survive. And now imagine there are 1 million toads like that, and each of them is an attractive lunch for predators. This creature is native to South and Central America, but became most famous after it caused an environmental disaster in Australia. It all started in 1935 when people brought cane toads to fight the cane beetle. These insects were spoiling sugarcane crops in the northern part of the country. Farmers thought the imported toads would quickly get rid of the pests, but far from getting help, Australia received even more damage. The first problem was that toads didn't hunt bugs. Well, that would have been nice to know beforehand. Insects lived on the tall stalks of reeds, and toads couldn't jump as high, so toads would feed on other insects and multiply rapidly. Initially, about 100 reed toads were brought. Farmers managed to breed more than 2,000 of these animals and release them into the fields. The amphibian population grew to 200 million in less than 85 years. They flooded Australia and caused a decrease in the population of those predatory animals that fed on them. Unfortunately, the local fauna didn't manage to develop immunity to the toad poison. The invasive toads would wander all over the northern part of the continent, spreading at a speed of 30 miles per hour and causing damage to all the biological environments they came across. Locals said they had witnessed birds falling from the sky after eating toads. These jumping animals are dangerous for those who eat and touch them. Any animal that licks or bites a toad will immediately receive a measure of poison hazardous to their health. The endurance of toads escalates the problem. They can withstand nearly any weather conditions and can breed anywhere. You can hear them croaking in tropical forests, coastal thickets, and even among dunes. They deal with cold temperatures and heat and eat everything in their path. They're not picky when it comes to food. Amphibians feed on live insects, carrion, and waste. But the most crucial problem is the speed of their reproduction. Female cane toads lay from 8 to 30,000 eggs twice a year. Within 3 days, tiny tadpoles hatch from the eggs. They swim in the water for 20 weeks, then become toads. Their life expectancy is from 5 to 10 years in the wild. Bad weather conditions, predators, drought, and anything else can't stop them. People don't know what to do with them either. The only chance to save other animals is to teach them not to eat toads. Scientists cook sausages from cane toads with a small concentration of poison inside. They gave this food to monitor lizards, freshwater crocodiles, and other predators so they could recognize the taste of the toad. Animals were slightly poisoned by the toad sausages, and remember that anything with this smell was dangerous. Scientists hope they won't approach the toads after smelling them. Amphibians have destroyed most of the biodiversity in the northern part of the country, and now they're rapidly moving to Western Australia. Scientists hope their plan saves animals, but what to do next? Perhaps nature can offer a solution to the problem. Some predatory animals may become immune to toad toxins, but it's unknown when this will happen. Invasive toads are quite a severe problem for ecology, but they look harmless. And how about invasive pythons? In the Everglades in Florida, Burmese pythons threaten the local wildlife. Giant crawling monsters have become the dominant species, displacing their alligator enemies from the swamps. Pythons hunt rabbits, possums, and other animals, decreasing their population by 99%. Of course, there are not as many pythons as toads, and people can get rid of them. But the problem is that they are exceptionally good at hiding. Even professional wildlife experts can't find them in the swamps and jungles. These pythons are also excellent hunters. They hide, wait, and attack, which makes them some of the most dangerous invasive creatures in the world. But fortunately, they don't attack people. Feral hogs are some of the most aggressive invasive species on Earth. They have razor-sharp teeth and mighty tusks. They're not afraid of anything and will attack even a human. These big, fast animals eat acorns, chestnuts, turtle eggs, turkey and quail eggs, trample plants, and strike terror into all creatures in the area. They can cause $1.5 billion in damage annually in 47 states. Imported in the U.S. several centuries ago, feral hogs have recently experienced a fertility splash. Local biologists and farmers are trying to solve the problem, but at the moment, it's pretty challenging to control the feral hog population. This tiny beetle seems harmless, but can cause orange juice to disappear in the U.S. This is the Asian citrus psyllid that loves to eat orange fruit. This insect contains bacteria that infect citrus trees and slowly destroys them. After getting infected, tree roots deform, oranges fall to the ground earlier than they're supposed to, and the tree slowly loses vital energy. The Asian citrus psyllid spreads in Florida, where about 80% of the country's orange juice is produced. Also, this parasite is found in Georgia, Texas, Louisiana, and California, the states where many lemons grow. So we've seen invasive amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and insects. What about invasive birds? The European starling is a cute little bird, but it ceases to be so as soon as it joins a giant flock. Starlings gather in groups of hundreds and thousands, resembling massive black clouds. They fly to cities, villages, and harvest fields in search of food. Birds eat cattle feed and thus create a lot of problems for farmers. This invasive insect doesn't threaten other animal species, doesn't spoil crops and trees, doesn't bite, and doesn't transport any infection. But its main problem is the unpleasant smell that it emits. There are so many brown marmorated stink bugs in the U.S. that, most likely, some of them live in your house. If you've ever seen it, you probably remember that stinky smell. Thanks to this fragrance, stink bugs have almost no enemies, at least in America. But in China, their populations are controlled by wasps that use the back of bugs to lay eggs. There are no such wasps in the States, so stink bugs breed freely here. Now, let's talk about one of the most invasive plants in the world. This is giant hogweed. It secretes a poison that is activated when exposed to sunlight. The toxin can burn skin and destroy trees and plants growing around giant hogweed. From the outside, it may seem like a beautiful plant. It has a tall 15-foot stem with a beautiful white flower. But this plant gets rid of other vegetation around it. Giant hogweed releases its seeds, and a light breeze spreads them for miles. When new plants grow, they destroy any other plants living nearby. The problem is that giant hogweed has no enemies. Insect pests can't eat it because of its poison. Animals also avoid it. Well, maybe nature will create some bugs that will eat its leaves and thus restore the balance.
Let's go with the widely accepted theory that a massive asteroid hitting our planet wiped out the dinosaurs. It does make you wonder why mammals made it, though. One idea is that mammals were better prepared. Back then, they weren't the most popular creatures on Earth, but they were pretty diverse. They bred themselves into a huge range of species, and it might have saved them. Some said mammals survived because they were smaller, so they needed fewer resources. As they had to constantly hide from dinosaurs, they managed to survive in difficult environments, way before the hit. But let's say the asteroid never came, and it never damaged the environment the dinosaurs thrived in. It's safe to say our fauna would look different today. Take the mighty Titanosaur. It's considered the biggest land animal to ever exist, some reaching lengths of about 7 standard cars lined up. It had a neck so long that it would have needed a 2-story home just to fit. It also had a plant-based diet, so it ate from the ground, but from very tall trees too. There was nothing much left to eat for, say, the little Jeremiah, a mammal that lived roughly at the same time, but was as small as a popsicle stick. Let's take this thought experiment a bit further and imagine we have a time machine that could transport today's mammals to the time of the dinosaurs. Some scientists say they have gotten bigger, so there's a chance they could survive, right? They're also much more evolved in terms of their diets and skills. Others say definitely not. They couldn't survive, mostly because they're too small to compete with dinosaurs. An adult T-Rex was just about the size of a bus. It probably wouldn't waste its time trying to capture food that's human-sized, for instance. They'd probably be on the lookout for prey the size of a car, or even bigger, like an elephant. And it most likely wouldn't take them long to win the fight. Sure, a T-Rex might munch on something smaller too, but only if it's really hungry and has no other alternative. If we had no choice but to send some mammals back in hopes they could survive, what would be our best bet? Some say the chimpanzee could be a good candidate, as these primates build their sleeping nests higher up in trees. This might have kept them safe from the carnivore dinosaurs living on land. There's no real evidence of dinosaurs being able to fly, but we do know there might have been some reptiles that took to the sky for transportation. Like pterosaurs, the flying lizard. These ones like to eat fish and smaller animals, but who's to say they wouldn't pick up a chimpanzee given the opportunity? Another good candidate might be the hyena. Today, the spotted hyena is the most common big carnivore in Africa, and it's highly adaptable. They could snatch up all sorts of prey by themselves or even in larger units. They can digest most parts of their prey, including the skin and bones. These animals aren't picky eaters, and they wouldn't mind chewing on parts that other creatures would gladly skip on. Not to mention, they'll eat fruits too, if needed. Hyenas are overall healthy and sturdy animals, with some studies showing they hardly ever get health problems. But like any other animal on this planet, the hyenas also have their weaknesses. We still don't know why these creatures can't be found in Europe anymore. But some research suggests they found it hard to coexist with humans and wolves. Also, they're not very adapted to living in forests. Orcas might have been able to rub elbows with the dinosaurs too. These creatures also don't have any natural predators, which earned them the nickname the wolves of the sea. That's because they go out looking for prey the same way wolves do, in groups. Orcas may be related to dolphins, but we can hardly call them friendly. as there have been cases of them sinking ships on purpose. They're highly intelligent animals that spend time together and are very organized. They also do this thing where they often take down more prey than they're prepared to eat. It may be because they see this experience as training. Other theories suggest orcas are so intelligent that they look for food in advance, even though they're not hungry yet. It might also be because whenever they want something to munch on, they're looking for the best quality food there is. The reason why they might not survive in the dinosaur era, though, is the global temperature. Back in the Mesozoic era, our planet was seriously hotter, several degrees warmer than it is today. Orcas prefer living in colder waters, but you'll find them in all oceans and most seas. Ostriches are the no-brainer answer. Look at them. They're practically dinosaurs. They even have a long-lost dino cousin that lived in the Cretaceous era, called the Struthiomimus. Its name translates to ostrich-like because of its similar powerful and speedy legs, agility, and even feathers. On the downside, they might not be able to take down larger dinosaurs. The vegetation back in the Mesozoic era would have been different too. Conifers used to dominate land, and ostriches are known to be pretty picky eaters, so they might have had a difficult time finding food back then. There are plenty of reasons to send felines through that time machine too. In the Jurassic period, for example, there were plenty of slow-moving prey to eat and tons of hiding spots in the thick bushes. Felines are sneaky animals, have precise vision, and are extremely good at climbing. Some pack a punch for their size, making them fierce fighters. Lions are good contenders because of their speed and teamwork. They might be able to take down some decent-sized dinosaurs, like the Europasaurus, when working together. Leopards are really good at climbing trees, so they could snatch prey and enjoy it above the ground, where they might be safe from bigger predators. What might be their downfall is, again, the temperature difference. It was considerably hotter back then. Today's large mammals aren't equipped to deal with that extreme heat. Lions might be the kings of the savannah now, but it would be too hot even for them. If they ever want to grab a spiky-tailed herbivore for lunch like the Tugiangosaurus or Stegosaurus, they might be in for a surprise. One hit from their extremely powerful tail could cause some serious damage. Not to mention run-ins with raptors like the frightening Saurophaganix. The single most likely animal that might survive being roommates with the dinosaurs is the platypus. This quirky Aussie creature is one of those rare egg-laying mammals. It's a fan of freshwater and as close to a living relic as an animal can be. Scientists were able to trace its origin back as far as 120 million years ago. For food, it wields its sensitive beak to catch shrimp and worms underwater. When it dives, skin flaps cover its eyes and ears, so it becomes blind and deaf. But it still uses that beak like a high-tech radar. A grown platypus can even feast on half its body weight in a single night. Scientists have known for a while it shares many traits with reptiles, like its shoulder bones or the fact that it lays eggs. Other creatures that coexisted with the dinosaurs still exist today, just not mammals. Snakes made their way into our fauna in those prehistoric times too, as well as cockroaches and bees. Some species of sharks are even considered to predate the dinosaurs. And if we look at our entire planetary history, we'll see they survived 4 out of 5 periods of mass extinction. Horseshoe crabs have the nickname living fossils because their evolution was much slower than any other animal that we know of. Not because they're not smart, but simply because they found their perfect form much sooner. So they didn't need to make a lot of changes. They have a very rudimentary immune system, but it seems to work wonders. No wonder they stayed pretty much the same for over 400 million years.
A mega drought might hit Australia soon, and this isn't just about a couple of dry seasons. We're talking about 20 years of little or no rain. While Australia could be facing the longest and most devastating drought since official records began, the rest of the world might struggle to buy bread, flour, or cereals. Energy prices are likely to spike globally, and neighboring countries like New Zealand, Indonesia, and Malaysia must be prepared to receive Australians directly affected by the lack of water. To truly understand how severe this situation could become, we should first examine past disasters. First off, Australia is no stranger to droughts, and this phenomenon can happen across their entire territory. From 2017 to 2019, the southeast part of the country went through what they called the tinderbox drought. This was a severe bone-dry event where the cooler months saw only about half the usual rainfall. Parts of Australia became so dry that wildfires were a constant threat. Crops failed, and water was scarce. This drought was also thought to have contributed to the Black Summer fire disaster. By the end of 2019, bushfires were raging across the country on a scale never seen before, with people describing them as rivers of lava flowing down from treetops. The losses were staggering. The tourist industry alone took a hit of $2.8 billion, and over 7,000 jobs disappeared as a result of this difficult period. The tinderbox drought was a big reminder of what Australia might face in the future. That's why it's so important to understand what happened in the past to get a full picture of a possible 20-year mega drought. But there is one problem. Even though droughts are relatively common in Australia, the rainfall data available until today isn't enough for researchers to predict the future, and our records only go back to around 1900. So experts decided to study tree rings to uncover missing environmental data. If you look at a tree stump, you'll notice concentric rings on its surface. As trees grow, they form new rings, and the thickness of these rings depends on how much water they get. During a megadrought, the rings appear thinner because the trees don't have much water. Unfortunately, these natural records usually only go back a few hundred years, and it only tells us about specific local conditions, not the situation across all of Australia. So, experts turn to computer models to simulate how Earth's climate changed from the year 850 to 2000. This approach helped them to paint a picture of when megadroughts might have occurred in Australia and how to predict what might happen in the future. But what they were really interested in was whether the human factor might be making this scenario worse over the years and if we are somehow intensifying these dry periods. So, are we to blame for these megadroughts? The short answer is, we're not sure yet. On one hand, dry periods in Australia do seem to last longer than they did before factories and machines became common. On the other hand, they don't seem to be getting more intense or happening more often than before industrial times. This means a drought lasting 20 years might not be directly linked to human activities. Actually, this kind of phenomenon is just a normal part of how rainfall changes in Australia over time. This is backed up by evidence from ice cores, which suggests that a 39-year drought hit eastern Australia around 800 years ago. What makes it all so fascinating is that there isn't just one cause for this phenomenon. I mean, there is no single mechanism that explains all cases of megadroughts. It happens because the right combination of ocean and atmospheric conditions come together, and you end up with a drought. And just by random chance, you might have periods where there are 100-year-long droughts. Despite what many people think, megadroughts are not geographically isolated. They have occurred on every continent except Antarctica over the past 2,000 years, and are often linked to natural events. For instance, megadroughts in North America and Southwest South America were driven by El Niño, where the Pacific Ocean near the equator gets warmer than usual, disturbing normal weather patterns. They are not rare events either. In fact, the U.S. Southwest has been experiencing a megadrought since 2000. It's being considered the driest period in 1,200 years for the region. Major reservoirs like Lake Mead and Lake Powell are at low levels. Heat waves are hitting cities like Phoenix and Las Vegas harder than ever, and wildfires are happening more frequently as the land gets drier. Now, let's think about the future. Even though we have a very recent and concrete example from the US, research can't exactly predict how a 20-year megadrought would play out in Australia. Usually, such events show up mainly as reduced rainfall and snowfall. But in most areas, the increase in drought risk will be caused by a warmer, more arid atmosphere. So the ground will probably look parched and cracked, rivers and lakes will likely shrink, and the sky will be relentlessly clear and blue, with barely a cloud in sight. Farmers might struggle to grow crops, making grocery prices rise worldwide. Things like bread, flour, and cereals may become scarcer, as Australia supplies about 13% of global wheat exports. Coal mines might be affected, as they depend on water for extraction, washing, and processing. That might drive up power costs for industries around the world, which could be passed on to consumers, impacting global growth and inflation. As cities might face water shortages, Australians will likely find new ways to conserve every drop or maybe move to New Zealand or Southeast Asia. Now, you're probably thinking, when is this big event going to happen? Honestly, it's really hard to predict exactly. Megadroughts can happen every 150 to 1,000 years, but experts think Australia should be ready for one to happen in the next 10 years or so. And this possibly should be taken seriously. This phenomenon has been known to contribute to the collapse of entire civilizations. Take the Akkadians of Mesopotamia, who built the world's first empire more than 4,000 years ago. Studies of moisture at the ruins of Akkadian cities suggest that they experienced a massive drought lasting 300 years, and this may have led to their collapse. A similar thing happened to the Assyrian Empire, which existed over 2,700 years ago, in what is now northern Iraq. For years, it was a real mystery why they left their capital of Nineveh and never returned. But recent studies of a stalagmite in the Cunaba cave revealed that the rise and fall of the empire coincided with a wet period followed by a 125-year-long megadrought. Because they were very dependent on seasonal rain for agriculture, this dry period made their life much harder. Even though experts now believe they probably left because of the dryness, the question of where they went is still a mystery. So, yep, megadroughts may have played a role in the collapse of great civilizations in the past. But on the positive side, we've come a long way since then, and recent climate technologies can help us prepare for events like this. Now that we know a 20-year megadrought is very much possible and might happen soon, Australia has some time to get ready for it. Developing strong water management plans to mitigate the severe impacts of a megadrought is more than necessary, and it's also important to create community support networks to provide emotional and financial support to people, particularly farmers, who are more affected directly by this event. If initiatives like these emerge in the coming years, those 20 years of drought could be less intense than most people might expect. Most rivers in the world flow into the sea, but the Okavango in Africa takes its massive waters right into the Kalahari Desert, and it looks like this river manages to do the impossible and defies gravity. The Okavango starts in the highlands of Angola, runs for 1,000 miles like any other normal river, and then drops into the largest inland delta on Earth, known as the Okavango Swamp. The delta has land slopes dropping at nearly 150 feet, which is about half as tall as the Statue of Liberty. The area where the Okavango Delta is now used to be part of a lake that dried up around 2,000 years ago. It takes the Okavango water several months to complete its journey, and the landscape there is never the same. The first European to have found the delta was the Scottish explorer David Livingstone. Yeah, the Dr. Livingstone, I presume, guy? That's him. When he first saw it, he was shocked as he noticed that the water seemed to be flowing backward and even uphill. He saw two strong watercourses connecting the Okavango to the wetland systems to the east. Decades later, other explorers saw them completely dry. Several years later, the watercourses were full again, and they kept emptying and filling up, sometimes changing direction. Scientists managed to explain this mystery when they found a hidden network of faults, part of the Great Rift Valley, under the sand. When major earthquakes happen, like the one in Indonesia in 2004, the Earth sets off a chain reaction. Tiny cracks underground shift just enough to send a trickle of water down the river, and a flood begins, raising the water levels. Plus, in May and June, when winter begins in the southern hemisphere, floods bring more fresh water and life to the swamp. Islands get submerged completely during the peak floods and then resurface again at the end of the wet season. Wildlife just loves all the water in the delta, and you can often see migratory elephants bathing among pink lily pads and silverfish, bream, barbels, and other fish. There are lions, cheetahs, buffalo, wildebeests, hippopotamuses, hippopotami, zebras, wild dogs, crocodiles, and other species of animals. Storks, ibis, herons, cranes, and geese like to fly by, along with 450 species of birds. Although the Okavango has plenty of water that is priceless in the desert, people hardly settle along its banks. One big problem here is the tsetse fly. But if you're feeling adventurous, you can come here for a water safari. Scientists from Imperial College in London stumbled upon a totally unexpected river under the Antarctic ice sheet. It slurps up water from an area as big as Germany and France combined. Scientists used to think the lakes under the Antarctic ice were just chilling by themselves. But now it turns out they're part of an interconnected river network. Water under the ice can form in two ways, either from melted snow seeping down or from the Earth's natural heat and the ice grinding over the ground. The Antarctic gets a lot of surface melting during the summer, but Antarctica is usually too chilly for that. This newly found river is proof that there's plenty of water down there just from the ice melting from below. This river could make Antarctica lose its icy cover way faster. If things heat up enough to melt the surface, that water could rush down and mess with the base of the ice sheet, turning Antarctica into a melting mess like Greenland. If the ice starts moving faster than the water can handle, it's going to create more friction, making even more water and speeding up the melting process. The researchers are on a mission to dig deeper into how this river system works and see if it's causing trouble in other parts of the icy continent. Understanding what's going on down there could give us a heads up on how a changing Antarctica might shake up the whole planet. The Roe River in Montana flows for just a bit over 200 feet between Giant Springs and the Missouri River. It was mentioned in the Guinness Book of World Records as the shortest river in the world, but they had to remove this category altogether because there was some heated debate over this title. Residents of Oregon claim that their D River was the absolute champion, as it all depends on when you measure them. There could even be shorter rivers in Norway or Indonesia, depending on what you see as a river. The official definition says it's something that has constant flowing water in the form of a current and is fed by upland sources or another river, lake, or watershed. Creeks and brooks flow together to form streams. Streams become rivers, and rivers take the water from higher to lower lands, ending in the ocean. There are 12 stream orders, and the first two levels don't have other streams feeding them. So, Roe and its other short buddies technically deserve the title of rivers. I'm glad we cleared that up. Rio Negro in South America is the largest blackwater river in the world and the largest left tributary of the Amazon jungle. Its waters look more like strong tea and seem pitch black only from the distance. They get that dark color from humic acid. When plants containing phenol break down only halfway, they leave behind this tea-like hue. Some people believe that blackwater rivers can't be productive, but Rio Negro helps big fishing industries and has spots where turtles come to lay their eggs. Back in the 17th century, explorers didn't find tons of indigenous folks along the river. But it probably didn't have to do with its productivity, more with diseases and conflicts. There are around 700 different fish species documented in Rio Negro's basin, including at least 100 you won't find anywhere else. A bunch of those fish end up in aquariums, like the super popular cardinal tetra. There is a canal connecting Rio Negro and the Orinoco, which is another major river in South America. Many aquatic species try to move between the rivers, but only the toughest can handle the mix of blackwater and clearwater sections in that canal. There's a unique creek in Wyoming that drains both into the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans. It begins high up in the Teton Range and later splits into two branches. The Pacific Creek joins the larger Snake River, which merges with the Columbia River and finally reaches the Pacific Ocean. The Atlantic Creek heads east and flows into the Yellowstone, Missouri, and Mississippi rivers and eventually empties into the Gulf of Mexico. If you connect the two creeks' watersheds on a map, you'll get a single blue line between Oregon and Louisiana. Explorers who were looking for the Northwest Passage between the two oceans never knew they could have used the creek. They would just need really tiny boats. Some scientists believe that cutthroat trout knew about this route long before people. They managed to migrate from the Snake River to the Yellowstone River, most likely using the Two-Ocean Creek. Now, every summer, the Caño Cristales in Colombia turns into a liquid rainbow, or the River of Five Colors. At this time, and until the end of fall, the conditions are just perfect for the riverbed to turn bright red, yellow, green, blue, and black. You gotta thank certain aquatic plants growing in the river, a special type of seaweed for all this beauty. During the wet season, the river moves fast and the sun cannot get to these plants. When the dry season hits, there isn't enough water to feed them. So, the time in between the seasons has the perfect conditions for this colorful show. No other place in the world has anything similar. So, at some point, the number of tourists who wanted to see it became so huge that scientists got concerned it could be bad for this hotspot of biodiversity. The area is home to rare species of animals, birds, and plants. Now, there are ecotourism trails and strict opening hours for visitors.
Thousands of years ago, a huge meteor weighing 2 million tons crashed into Earth at a speed of around 56,000 miles per hour. Sounds like a big deal, and it was. It actually created Lonar Lake in Maharashtra. When you see it from above, it might look like any other lake, but the sand there is magnetic, and it makes compasses go haywire. First off, it's a soda lake. Nah, it's not filled with Coke. It's just another name for an alkaline lake. The pH levels there vary from 9 to 12, whereas humans enjoy ranges from 6.5 to 8.5. So it's not really advisable to bathe there, not to mention to drink such water. There's a little round dip, about 2,300 feet away from the main lake, which folks think was made by a piece of the main meteor. Near this lake, there's a Hanuman temple that has an idol carved from rock, and it's said to have some pretty strong magnetic vibes. Also, local farmers are draining water from Ambar Lake. Sometimes people refer to this lake as Chota Lonar, which means Little Lonar. This nearly perfect oval is one of only 2 natural craters in the world made entirely from basalt, a dark, finely textured volcanic rock. The water there is 7 times saltier than ocean water, and sometimes the lake can turn pink due to particular bacteria. Whenever you open up a tap to fill a glass of water, water goes from top to bottom because gravity, duh. It's hard to imagine it acting the other way around, but turns out there are many waterfalls that can defy gravity and go in the opposite direction. That's called a reverse waterfall, and it happens when super strong winds whip through a waterfall, pushing the water back up. It's especially common for those windy fall and winter months. You usually need winds of at least 46 miles per hour to see this cool trick in action. It's actually not as rare as one may think, and you can find these wild reverse waterfalls all over the globe, from Australia to India, Japan, the UK, and the US. In Australia, in areas like Sydney, the Central Coast, and Royal National Park, winds around 43 miles per hour have been known to turn waterfalls upside down. Yep, it's all about the wind going this fast. Please put aside all those weird myths about Australia being in the southern hemisphere, like the one about the water in the toilet flushing in the opposite direction. This is nothing but an urban myth. In India, near Mumbai, and in places like Sandan Valley and Amboli Hills, waterfalls get blown upward during the monsoon. And if you're ever in the Faroe Islands, you can witness this unique phenomenon happen regularly due to the region's geography and fierce winds from the North Atlantic. Magnetic Hill in Ladakh, India, is a fascinating spot, sitting at about 14,000 feet high, right along the Srinagar-Leh highway, just 16 miles from Leh city. It's known for a quirky gravitational trick where parked cars mysteriously roll uphill when left in neutral, defying logic and catching the attention of visitors from all over. Locals have their own myths, viewing it as a path between heaven and earth. You'll want to stop by between June and September when the weather is just right and the optical illusion effect is at its peak, typically from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. In Brazil, there's this street called Rua do Amendoim that seems to defy the laws of physics, leaving many puzzled as they walk or drive down it. Locals affectionately call it Peanut Street, and there's never a shortage of parking spots. That's mainly because if a car is parked without the emergency brake, it starts to roll uphill all on its own, picking up speed as it goes. People have all sorts of wild theories about why this happens. Some say the hill is haunted, while others think there's a huge iron ore deposit beneath it pulling cars up like a magnet. But believe it or not, the truth is that this strange occurrence is just an optical illusion. The street looks steep, but it actually has a slight dip. So, while it seems like cars are rolling uphill, they're really just going downhill. Still, that hasn't stopped folks from filming countless videos of this quirky sight. Located on the beautiful Black Sea coast, Ureki is a chill beach resort town known for its unique magnetic sands that are all about health and wellness. These sands have been getting attention for their healing powers since the 1800s, helping people tackle various health issues. Ureki's magnetic sand is packed with minerals like magnetite and quartz. It's got an unusual magnetic content of about 23%, making its magnetic field way stronger than that of regular sand. The Hessdalen Lights are mysterious glowing orbs seen in a 7-mile stretch of the Hessdalen Valley in central Norway. These lights have been popping up since at least the 1930s and can be spotted both day and night. They usually shine in bright white, yellow, or red and can hover, move quickly, or sway gently. Their appearances can last from a few seconds to over an hour. Though there were many sightings, especially between 1981 and 1984, the frequency has gone down to about 10 to 20 a year as of 2010. Various groups, like Project Hessdalen, have tried investigating these lights since 1983, using methods ranging from field studies to scientific research. As for what these lights actually are, no one really knows for sure. Some sightings have been explained away as things like car headlights or astronomical objects. One theory suggests they might come from a chemical reaction involving airborne dust from local mines. Another idea is that they could be clusters of particles interacting in a specific way due to the area's geology. Some researchers have even proposed that the lights might be a result of piezoelectricity due to certain rock types in the valley. Other theories include complex interactions between electromagnetic waves and dust, which could explain the light's unique shapes and colors. Saharan dust, which once even made its way to parts of the UK and left a red layer on cars, is full of naturally magnetic materials. On September 7, 2023, some folks noticed their cars were covered in reddish flecks because of the dust blown from the Sahara. A video making the rounds on Facebook showed someone using a magnet to lift the dust off their car. One commenter even got pretty heated, saying, "If you want to know what fell down last night, just grab a magnet and check this out," insisting it was metal, not sand. Naturally, this sparked chatter about how the dust's magnetic properties could be linked to chemtrails. But guess what? Experts are clear that magnetism is actually normal for Saharan dust. According to Professor Barbara Marr from the Center for Environmental Magnetism and Paleomagnetism at Lancaster University, the dust carries a mix of particles from the African ground and some air pollution as it heads to Europe and the UK. The red color is due to hematite, a weakly magnetic mineral. Sure, the dust can pick up some human-made magnetic particles along the way, but scientists say those are usually way less abundant than the naturally occurring ones. The whole chemtrails idea, which suggests planes are intentionally spraying harmful substances, is based on conspiracy theories that have been thoroughly debunked. In short, the presence of magnetic particles in Saharan dust, like that of hematite giving its reddish tint, doesn't back up the chemtrail theory at all. Not having the internet in 2024 seems sorta abnormal, right? When we talk about internet access, it primarily comes down to wired connections, mobile networks, and satellites. Fiber optic cables connect most of the world, except Antarctica, and many small islands. Mobile networks are also widespread. Even in remote areas like the Sahara, you might find patchy access. For people in rural spots, satellite internet is often the best bet, even if it's slower. Still, there are a few truly isolated spots left. Deep caves like Georgia's Kerbera Cave are internet-free due to their depth. And under the ocean, signals struggle to get through, making internet access poor or non-existent.